Chapter 10:12. Xiao, sure you're awake? When she opened her eyes, a gentle voice sounded by her ear. Xiao Jin got up naturally. She was wearing a white inner skirt, revealing her smooth bare back. That skin was like fine white jade, and someone who looked at it had the impulse to touch it. She responded faintly. This was a rather large hall. The main body was carved out of stone, but it was exquisite and complicated, as if it was something that only the most capable craftsman could carve. Furua came forward and tied a white gauze dress for her. She said gently, "It's cold outside. Please be careful." "It's okay." The crisp words were ethereal and quiet, as if they could calm people's hearts. It made people ask for a moment of peace. When Xiao Jin raised her hand, she felt that something was wrong. She didn't seem to be used to the empty hall. She had clearly been here for a long time. Furua brought her a white outer robe, which wrapped Xiao Jin's slender and beautiful body, caging her in a snowy white. Furua said again, "There's news from the royal family recently, saying that Song Shi is at the border and will be back in a few days. Do you want to go?" Xiao Jin lowered her eyes and walked out of the hall. Looking at the vast snow outside, she said calmly, "Did Song Shi say anything about the Rakshasa world's recent movements?" Furua shook her head. "No news has been sent back." Xiao Jin said faintly, "The Rakshasa world can't hold back anymore. It's only a matter of time before they break through space and come over. I only found the Devour Array points, but I don't know where the other 3 are. I don't know if the other 3 will appear to help me when the Rakshasa world changes." Furua's face paled for a moment. "Xiao, sure, isn't it a good thing if the other 3 array points don't appear? The cost of using them is too great. Xiao Jin only said, there will always be people who will be sacrificed." Her eyes looked forward, and she was a little confused. She suddenly frowned. 3? She pondered for a moment. Why did she suddenly feel that the rules had appeared long ago? However, this thought only flashed through her mind. It was so fast that she didn't catch it and couldn't recall it. "Jean." Suddenly, someone called her by her name. This was a disgraceful thing to do in the kingdom, but only one person dared to call her by her name. "Teacher Mo." Furua straightened herself up. The man who came in had a dignified appearance and was extraordinarily handsome. He wore a jade crown on his head and had a gentle smile on his face. He looked at Xiao Jin with uncontrollable joy in his eyes. "Jin, guess what I found at the border today?" Xiao Jin looked at Mo Fei Jin, his expression as calm as ever. "What did you find?" "This is it." Mo Fei Jin took out a fist-sized black stone from behind his back. "This is a formation stone I found at the border. It has the ability to temporarily seal a spiritual reader's ability." Xiao Jin frowned slightly. "This isn't anything good. If you keep fooling around with these things, the officials will scold you. You are going to inherit the throne in the future." Seeing that Xiao Jin didn't take it, Mo Fei Jin was a little annoyed. "It's not like it's something rare. Father and the others use it all the time, and it doesn't have any effect on you. It's not worth one, but if you can find a bunch of them, then won't you be able to seal my abilities?" Xiao Jin casually said. Mo Fei Jin was a little unconvinced. He muttered, "It can seal you? Who doesn't know that Song Shi will help you?" Xiao Jin didn't pay attention to his words and casually said, "I'll remind you again. Be careful of your brother." Chapter 10:13. Mo Fei Jin had an older brother, the illegitimate son of the current king. Although Mo Fei Jin was the only legitimate son, he should inherit the throne. But the throne never cared about these things. If Mo Fei Jin didn't pay attention, the throne would be taken away by his brother sooner or later. Mo Fei Jin didn't seem to care too much. He just looked at Xiao Jin, pulled on his hand, and said coquettishly, "Jin, can't you play with me?" "Now is not the time to play." Furua stepped forward and said in a low voice, "Teacher Mo, there are faint movements in the Rakshasa world. Song Shi of the Lian Kingdom has already gone to the border to investigate. Right now, Xiao Shi is also vexed." I know, I was just casually saying." Mo Fei Jin was childish. He looked at Xiao Jin and was a little distressed. "Jin, if I wasn't so weak, I could help you share the burden. But I'm not the strongest soul master like Song Shi, and I'm not the strongest array master like you. I'm just a wizard. I know they always look down on me. Don't say that. Qiao Jin patted his head. Wizards are also very powerful when they cultivate to the limit. Moreover, you have an extremely rare prophecy ability. It's very useful, but I can only make a few prophecies. I'm not sure if it's useful. Once it exceeds my limit, I won't be able to take it. I'm too weak. Mo Fei Jin sighed and walked to Qiao Jin's bedside. He spread out his hands and looked at Qiao Jin casually. Jin, if I'm very strong, I'll go to the border with Song Shi to fight the enemy. Will I have the honor of being liked by you? I'm not talking about being friends. Qiao Jin, not at all. After saying that, she was a little stunned. She remembered that she had never said such hurtful words. Mo Fei Jin. Furwa was shocked as well. Mo Fei Jin stared blankly for a moment, then became even more dejected. Sigh, there are so many people in the kingdom, and even in the entire world, who like Jin. Of course it won't be my turn. Moreover, she had the most powerful Song Shi by her side to protect her. Qiao Jin. She found it a little funny, but she couldn't say anything. At this moment, someone came in to report, Qiao Shi, Teacher Mo, Teacher Huan is back. Qiao Jin frowned slightly and looked away. Mo Fei Jin was stunned. Brother, you're back? He walked out to take a look and saw an equally imposing man walking over. His features were similar to Mo Fei Jin's, but compared to Mo Fei Jin, he had the air of a noble heir of a kingdom. He was cold and elegant, and even when he strode over, one could see that he had an extraordinary aura. Brother. Mo Fei Jin looked at Mo Fei Huan and called out happily. Although Mo Fei Huan was older than him and was born outside, Mo Fei Jin had never hated this brother of his, even if others kept saying that he could steal his throne. Mo Fei Huan's lips curled into a smile as he patted Mo Fei Jin's head. Then, he raised his head and glanced at the woman standing at the entrance of the hall with a cold expression. She was so elegant that it seemed like she refused to let anyone near her. No one could get close to her, except for that man who was also high above her. Her attitude and her existence were incomparably dazzling in his eyes. Mo Fei Huan closed his eyes. In that moment, Qiao Jin could feel his complicated emotions, but she could still feel that hint of malice. Mo Fei Huan had long harbored malice towards her because she supported Mo Fei Jin's ascension to the throne. She was Qiao Shi, the most powerful array master in the kingdom. Her words were the strongest decree. Chapter 10:14. Not to mention the fact that she had the most respected man of Liang Kingdom behind her. Qiao Jin suddenly gave a cold laugh. She felt a strong murderous intent rising in her heart in an instant. But in reality, she did not have such a strong killing intent towards Mo Fei Huan. Up until now, he had not done anything to offend her. She had always found him an eyesore. Because of the other status, because she felt that Mo Fei Huan was ambitious. He was definitely not satisfied with his status as the crown prince. He wanted the position of the crown prince. Even so, she should not have such a strong killing intent towards him. Qiao Jin thought of how she had felt strange since she woke up this morning. But she could not quite put her finger on what was wrong. She felt that her thoughts had suddenly become very jumbled. She should not be like this. This gave her a bad premonition. An array master's premonition and intuition were especially strong. Once a bad premonition appeared, it meant that something was going to happen. But this time, Qiao Jin had no clue at all. She could not feel that there was anything wrong with her. Qiao Shi. Mo Fei Huan looked at her, a smile on his lips. Recently, the border has not been very peaceful. Song Shi has already gone over. Are you not going to take a look? Why are you not going? Qiao Jin only gave him a sidelong glance. Even her rebuttal was calm. Song Shi is already preparing to return. If Teacher Huan is so worried, why don't you go see for yourself? Mo Fei Huan paused. Because in the past, Qiao Shi had never cared about what he said. She would either not answer, or respond with little effort. But today, she seemed a bit direct. Even Furua and Mo Fei-jin were surprised. Clearly, the two of them had sensed Xiao Jin's abnormality. She could clearly sense that something was wrong, but she did not know what the problem was. This was very irritating. Irritation was not something she should have. There must be something wrong. She calmed herself down and prepared to think carefully about what she had experienced yesterday to have such chaotic emotions. Mo Fei-jin could tell that Xiao Jin wasn't in a good mood. He didn't know if it had something to do with Songshi, so he hurriedly told his brother to leave. Jin didn't like his brother to begin with. If he continued to stay here, he was afraid that he would make Jin even angrier. When Mo Fei-huan returned, his eyes were cold. Did I offend her? Mo Fei-jin explained to Xiao Jin. Perhaps Jin felt something, which is why he is so unhappy. After all, the news from Songshi's side is not optimistic. Recently, the Rakshasa world has been acting strangely. Xiao Shi is worried that the Rakshasa world will break through space and come here. When that time comes, the people will be in a terrible situation. How can the Rakshasa world break through space? Mo Fei-huan was fully aware that this was an impossible matter. They're just worried for nothing. If they break through, the 4 major formation points won't leave them in the lurch. Master Song is already the strongest spirit master of speech. He was able to force the Rakshasa realm to retreat. What kind of worry is there? Mo Fei-jin was a little hesitant. But we are only human. The Rakshasa world was no longer human. How could they compare with each other? Even if Songshi and Xiaoshi were the strongest, how could they block the attack of a world's power?
He was a little distressed.
He felt that something was not right. Aren't they already close to God? After Mo Fei-huan said this, he saw Mo Fei-jin look over. Brother, you are so agitated. Mo Fei-huan. Afraid that this idiot would see through something, he simply stopped talking. He didn't know why, but when he looked at Xiao Jin today, he felt a chill in his heart. She looked even fiercer towards him. Chapter 10-15. Xiao Jin stayed in the hall for 2 days. In 2 days, she still couldn't figure out what was wrong. It had been snowing outside, and she was too lazy to go out. Recently, the world had not been peaceful. The Rakshasa world had triggered the outbreak of the demonized spiritual readers, causing chaos everywhere. There were also fluctuations of injustice at the border. The border was the place where Song Yanqing had once discovered the border with the Rakshasa world, at the bottom of the sea. But mortals couldn't go over, and the Rakshasa world couldn't come over. This was originally a consensus. Recently, the Rakshasa world had been acting strangely. Song Yanqing probably saw something bad. He was a spiritual reader. He could see the past and the future. He saw everything, but he couldn't say it. Otherwise, he would be condemned by the heavens. This was also the ability given to them. At the same time, it was also the cruelty of the heavens. Jin? A familiar voice came from behind. Xiao Jin was sitting on the table with the back of her hand against her head. Her eyes were half closed. When she heard the voice, a familiar aura also descended. As if with a biting cold wind and frost, a slender and perfect palm reached out from behind. The back of the hand touched Xiao Jin's cheek slightly. She shrank her face. Cold. Her hand grabbed his palm and turned around. You're back. Did you find anything? The man let out a deep magnetic laugh. When she turned around, she saw that beautiful face. Wearing a black robe, his handsome and slender body stood in front of her. Handsome, noble, full of elegance and gentleness. The smile on his face gradually disappeared when he looked into her eyes. He looked at her face and seemed to see something incredible in those eyes. Xiao Jin's expression gradually became a little stunned. What did you see? He was a spiritual reader.
He must have seen something.
Otherwise, he wouldn't have reacted like this. She asked, I've been feeling uneasy for the past 2 days. Did something happen?
What did you see from me?
No wonder. He reached out to touch her face, his eyes full of pain and longing. No wonder I couldn't see your future. Xiao Jin felt a little uneasy. What did you see? Song Yanqing just touched her face. Although it was a little cold, she didn't care about it anymore. She saw that this person's eyes were filled with heartache and longing, as well as a kind of nostalgia. The change in his eyes happened in an instant. He touched her face and smiled gently, but a tear fell from the corner of his eye. His voice became broken and sorrowful. "You've suffered. It was as if she had seen the most impossible thing in the world." He shed tears. What he saw made him tear up.
Then what did he see?
Xiao Jin felt as if many things were being pulled out of his mind in an instant. His voice was filled with reluctance and despair, turning into broken words that he repeated. "I can't bear to part with you. This is actually our farewell. I can't bear to let you go back, but you have to go back. You can't stay here. You don't belong here anymore. Go back, Jin. Don't be trapped here." With this sentence, it was as if the curtain was cut open. Something quickly collapsed. Song Yanqing in front of her became a blur. In an instant, he was very far away from her, very far away. It was like a picture that could never be grasped. She opened her eyes again. There was a surprised female voice beside her. "Jin, you're awake? You scared Mom to death." Chapter 10:16. Xiao Jin opened her eyes and found Xiao Fei's familiar face. She, on the other hand, appeared in the hospital. Her head was a little heavy. There seemed to be some unknown things in her memory, but when she remembered them, she felt empty. Before Song Yanqing finished speaking, she appeared in another world. What happened to me? The strange thing was that she had no memory of how she woke up. She was surrounded by white walls. The style was simple and familiar. This was a hospital, and it was the hospital she used to stay in. "Have you forgotten?" Xiao Fei, who was wearing a dress, looked a little nervous. "Lord Song brought you back from abroad. You were in a coma. He said something happened to you. You have been in a coma for 2 months. 2 months? Xiao Jin paused. This was a very unbelievable thing. She actually lost consciousness for 2 months.
Yes.
Xiao Fei's expression was full of worry. Mom was scared every day. I was so afraid that you wouldn't wake up. Thank God, you finally woke up. Xiao Jin looked at Xiao Fei strangely. 2 months? Where was I brought back by Yanqing before I was in a coma? She remembered that she went to get something according to the guide and saw the time array point. In the end, she saw the scene from 10,000 years ago in the time array point. No, why couldn't she remember? Xiao Jin's face froze for a moment because she clearly felt that there were more memories in her mind related to her past. But now when she tried to think carefully, she couldn't remember. Could it be that she couldn't get the time array point, so she only saw the past in it, but the time array point didn't allow her to bring the memories out? Seeing her gloomy face, Xiao Fei was a little nervous. Mom doesn't know. Lord Song said that you went out for something, but when you came back, you were in a coma. If you want to ask, you can call Lord Song. Xiao Jin thought about it and agreed. Song Yanqing had gone with him, so he definitely knew what had happened. And there was also Mo Jiang and Yu. She took Xiao Fei's phone and called Song Yanqing. About 2 months had passed, and the world outside the window had entered the depths of winter. The cold wind swirled in through the window, bringing with it a bone-chilling coldness. Xiao Fei felt the cold weather and hurriedly closed the window. Beep! The phone rang a few times, and the familiar gentle and elegant voice came through. Auntie Xiao. Hearing this familiar voice, Xiao Jin felt his heart settle down a little. Guanqing?
Jin?
Song Yanqing couldn't hide the surprise and joy in his voice. You're awake? Xiao Jin nodded and looked out of the window at the same time. His clear eyes revealed some confusion. I was in a coma for 2 months?
Yes.
Song Yanqing replied. At that time, I entered the time array point with you. When I came out, I saw you also came out unconscious on the ground. Mo Jiang, and you were also missing. You didn't wake up. I was worried that something had happened to you, so I brought you back. He seemed to finally breathe a sigh of relief. You're okay. That's great. Xiao Jin nodded. Mo Jiang, and you are missing. Where did they go? We stayed in the time array point for a week, so when we came out, Emo Jiang and you came back first. They're fine. Don't worry. Chapter 10:17. There seemed to be nothing wrong with Song Yanqing's words. Hearing this, Qiao Jin gently pursed her lips. That's good. Her voice was very light. There was neither the tiredness of just waking up nor the continuous questioning of what had happened in the past 2 months. Song Yanqing said that he would come to the hospital soon. After hanging up the phone, Qiao Fei sighed. Jin, you were in a coma for 2 months. Lord Song was worried to death and wanted to come every day. We couldn't stop him. He has so many things to do. Lord Song really likes you. You are so lucky. Qiao Jin didn't dwell on this topic. She just asked, where are Xiang Shan and Jinming? And Qi Lian and Qi Chu? Of course, they came to see you. Qiao Fei said, they must be concerned about you. But after all, you were in a coma for 2 months. They can't ignore the company's affairs. After work, they will come to see you. Plus, I am here. They have their own things to do. But now that you are awake, you wait for me to call them. They will come over later. Don't worry. Qiao Jin just nodded. She looked around. Thinking carefully about what happened underground, she couldn't seem to remember anything. She couldn't remember what she had experienced in the time formation point. This was a very abnormal thing. She summoned Devour and Rule. These 2 formation points were fine. Since there was no problem with the formation points, Qiao Jin gradually lowered her eyes. She probably experienced something in the time formation point and was pushed out by someone. She felt that she was pushed out by someone. That person's voice seemed to be as far away as 10,000 years, and there was endless sadness and despair. Now when she tried to think about it again, she couldn't remember anything. She had a headache and was upset. She wore a hospital gown and got out of bed to take a look elsewhere. The hospital was the one where she woke up for the first time. It was also a hospital under the Song Enterprise. Even the doctors and nurses were not changed much. Many people still had some impression of this girl who used to be mysterious. Seeing her wake up, they couldn't hide their surprise. Miss Qiao, you're awake? Qiao Jin heard a surprised voice behind him. He turned around. It was Hualing. Hualing was the nurse who had checked her birth chart for the first time after she woke up in the hospital. At that time, she had concluded that something would happen to her younger brother. Later on, Hualing's younger brother had indeed met with an accident. She had gone back to her hometown to deal with it. Now, she had returned to continue working in the hospital. That's great. Hualing looked a little emotional. I didn't expect you to come back. You've been in a coma for so long, but your body is still very healthy. I was unconscious for 2 months? Qiao Jin repeated the question. Hualing nodded. Qiao Jin said, I was in the hospital for 2 months. Who sent me here? It was Lord Song. Lord Song used to come to the hospital for checkups, so Hualing knew who he was. He was a completely distinguished person. But she didn't expect that he would be with Miss Qiao later. They were actually quite compatible. Lord Song was very sad when he sent you here. He was afraid that you would not wake up. Thinking of the scene that day, Hualing couldn't help sighing softly. With a relaxed smile, she said, It's great that you woke up. Qiao Jin suddenly smiled faintly. It's great. Thank you for your trouble during this time. Hualing was a little flattered. She quickly waved her hand. Of course, it's no trouble. This is our profession. Chapter 10:18. Qiao Jin nodded and didn't say anything. Hualing actually felt strange in her heart. Miss Qiao had been in a coma for 2 months, but medical science couldn't find anything wrong with her. Now that she had woken up, she was like a normal person, as if she had just slept. This was a very strange situation. Many experts came to check Miss Qiao's body, and they all said that there was nothing wrong with her. She was very healthy. She was completely a normal sleeping person. It was winter now, and the new year would be in a few days. Qiao Jin came out in a thin hospital gown. When the wind blew, she could still feel the bone-chilling cold. After a while, she saw a familiar voice coming from the corridor. His slender figure was like jade bamboo, and his whole body seemed to be covered with a layer of gentle light. Wearing a black fur collar coat, he looked a little more serious, which was rare. It seemed that they hadn't seen each other for 2 months, and Xiao Jin's matter had made him not so gentle. When he saw Xiao Jin, he still had the familiar gentle smile, and the joy in his eyes couldn't be faked. Jin. He walked over and hugged Xiao Jin, which was rare for him to lose his composure. She was obviously tall, but she looked a little petite in his arms. When she snuggled into his arms, her expression was calm, and she just blinked. There was still a familiar smell in her arms. When she raised her head, she saw his deep eyes. "What's wrong? You don't seem to recognize me?" He was gently teasing. Xiao Jin nodded. "After all, I was in a coma for 2 months. I thought you had amnesia." Song Yanqing touched her head. "It's good that you remember me." His gentle appearance made the medical staff next to them feel that they were not enough to eat. Hualing looked at him with pink bubbles, and she couldn't hide her envious expression. Who didn't want to be hugged by such a noble and elegant boyfriend? His gentleness was only for you, and he treated you like a treasure in the world. Xiao Jin looked up at him and asked casually, "Why didn't you come to watch over me?"
Of course I did.
Song Yanqing still gently touched her head. "I come to see you every day. When I have time, I will come here. I'm afraid you won't wake up." "What should I do then?" "I didn't know you were in there." He lowered his voice to avoid being overheard. "What happened? Do you still remember?" Xiao Jin shook his head. Song Yanqing said gently, "It doesn't matter if you can't remember. You'll remember sooner or later. Just like you said, let nature take its course." Xiao Jin finally curled her lips into a smile. She said, "You've been busy lately, haven't you? You seem to have lost weight." "It's a little too much." A hint of fatigue appeared between Song Yanqing's brows. "I was thinking about you, and the fact that we found traces of Mo Huan overseas."
Mo Huan.
Xiao Jin and Song Yanqing went into the ward to talk. Xiao Fei was still helping Xiao Jin peel fruit. She rarely did this kind of thing, and was not very familiar with it. When Xiao Jin came in, she cut her finger and immediately cried out with tears in her eyes. Xiao Jin looked and sighed slightly. Fei, if you don't know how to do it, don't force yourself." "How can I not know how to do it?" She was still unconvinced. "How can I not know how to peel fruit? I just haven't done it in a long time. It's all your uncle's fault. He spoiled me too much." Xiao Jin. It was indeed Xiao Fei who had the ability to shift the blame. Song Yanqing saw Xiao Fei and called out, "Auntie Xiao." Chapter 1019. Xiao Fei smiled. "Hey, you guys take your time. What do you want to eat? I'll cut it for you." There were many people who came to see Xiao Jin. Every time they came, they would bring a lot of gifts. The ward was already full. Xiao Jin looked around. There was an extra source of heat on his body. Song Yanqing naturally took off his coat and put it on Xiao Jin. Xiao Jin turned his head and said in a low voice, "I thought I would stay at home. After all, the doctor said I was fine." "You can't be careless about this kind of thing." Song Yanqing touched her cheek with the back of his hand and asked her to lie on the bed. "It's a little cold. I'll take you back after you finish the checkup and make sure you're fine. I don't know what's wrong with you. It's best to put you in the hospital. Sometimes modern instruments can find out things that others don't know." With Xiao Fei around, the two of them didn't speak loudly. Xiao Fei was cutting fruits in the kitchen of the VIP ward. Hearing this, she muttered, "The two of them are still whispering." As expected, I'm not important as their mother. Xiao Jin and Song Yanqing heard this, and both of them laughed. Xiao Jin continued to ask, "What's the matter with Mo Huan you mentioned just now?" Mo Huan also appeared there. Song Yanqing's expression was a little cold. He brought a large group of people. They were all spiritual psychics, array masters, and wizards. At that time, they wanted to break into the time array point. However, before they could get close, most of them were killed. Mo Huan saw Mo Jiang and Yu there, and ran away. After all, they were brought close to the time array point by Xiao Jin. But in fact, Its effect could spread outside the palace. Those who were weak didn't even have the qualifications to get close to it. Otherwise, he would fall into the illusion and die without a sound. Mo Huan saw that there were people and didn't dare to advance rashly. That was why he ran away. He also knew very well that no one could get the time array point. He was here for something else. Xiao Jin said thoughtfully, "Looks like there really is something wrong with Mo Huan." This background of Ho Wan's boyfriend was only described by others. As for what kind of person he was, it would only be known after meeting him in person. Xiao Jin was at a loss as to whether or not he was his sworn enemy. At this time, Xiao Jin realized something. Something was deliberately blurring her memory. She remembered the appearance and ability of her archenemy very clearly, but she couldn't remember his name at the moment. She had never found it strange, as if it was a very normal thing. She remembered this person, but she didn't know who this person was. This was obviously wrong. She actually only realized it at this time. It seemed that the time frame had given her a certain reminder. That proved one thing. Her amnesia couldn't be separated from the time array point, and it was also related to her resurrection. Otherwise, there was nothing else that could make her take everything for granted. Song Yanqing said in a timely manner, "There is a big problem," but he ran too fast. Mo Jiang didn't catch him. Xiao Jin said, "I want to see Mo Jiang and you. At that time, you followed me into the array point. How did you come out?" Song Yanqing frowned slightly. "Actually, it's a little strange. I can't remember. When I woke up, you were unconscious on the ground." He had no memory of everything that happened in the array. Xiao Jin nodded. "I wouldn't have been unconscious for 2 months for no reason. There's something wrong with the time frame." Chapter 10:20. "I know." Song Yanqing's tone was gentle. "There must be something wrong with the timing, but I didn't know how long you would be in a coma." He held Xiao Jin's hand. His palm was warm, just like he was facing Xiao Jin now. It was warm enough to penetrate into his bones. "Fortunately, you woke up." There was a hint of relief in his voice. If Xiao Jin didn't wake up, or if it was a little later, he didn't know what would have happened. Xiao Jin saw his expression, pursed his lips, and smiled. "Don't be afraid. I will wake up. The timing won't let anything happen to me." Song Yanqing nodded. "I understand." Xiao Fei brought them the peeled fruit. Although it was a little crooked, at least it was cut by her, so it was edible. Seeing Xiao Fei coming over, Song Yanqing also straightened up. "I'll ask Mo Jiang and you to come over." Knowing that Xiao Jin would definitely want to see them, Song Yanqing didn't delay. Xiao Jin had just woken up, so Xiao Fei probably had something to say to Xiao Jin. Xiao Jin nodded and went outside to make a call. Xiao Fei sat down, and her voice was full of relief. "Fortunately, you woke up.
You scared me."
She held Xiao Jin's wrist and said, "Tell me the truth. Is it related to your so-called spiritual reader?" She frowned faintly, and her eyes were full of worry. "I know you are very powerful, but there are some things you can't do without telling us. Look at this time. You went with Lord Song, but something happened and you didn't wake up for 2 months. We didn't know anything and could only care about you in the hospital day by day, waiting for you to wake up. There was nothing we could do. Xiao Jin, I know you have your own ideas, but can you spare a thought for me? You're my only daughter." Even if she wasn't his biological child, he had raised her for 20 years and had a good relationship with her. What was the difference between her and his biological child? Xiao Fei was afraid that something would happen to Xiao Jin. Xiao Jin held her hand and whispered, "Fei Fei, I'm sorry this time, but there won't be a next time." "Xiao Fei, didn't you say that every time? I don't even know if I should trust you now." Xiao Jin blinked. "You can only trust me, Fei Fei. Some things will happen even if I don't do it. I'm different from you. Even if I don't do it, some things will come to me." Xiao Fei frowned. "Why?" "Xiao Jin, because the stronger you are, the more different the world you face." She seemed to want to say something, but Song Yanqing walked in after making a phone call. "They'll be here soon." Xiao Jin nodded. Xiao Fei also said, "Your brother and Uncle Mu should be here soon. I've just informed them that you've woken up. Your grandfather was also worried about you. He came to the hospital almost every day for the past 2 months. He didn't even go fishing. He even went to the temple to ask for a protective talisman for you. Xiao Jin raised his eyebrows. This doesn't seem like something my grandfather would do. Yes, I'm also surprised. Xiao Fei also couldn't believe it. It's too sudden. It's said that the temple is very spiritual. That's why your grandfather went to ask for a protective talisman for you. You woke up not long after. It's still useful,
Xiao Fei said.
She didn't know why Xiao Jin woke up 2 months later. Xiao Jin didn't know either. However, there would be an answer to everything in the end. Chapter 10:21. After a while, Mu Xiangshan and the others were the first to arrive. He was probably at home with Mu Zilian and Mu Zichu. The three of them walked in. When Mu Xiangshan saw Xiao Jin waking up, he snorted with his hands behind his back. You're finally awake. There was a hint of reproach in his words, but there was also a hint of worry in them. Although the old man believed in Xiao Jin's ability unconditionally, she didn't believe in him for 2 months. She was probably still frightened. No one knew what would happen to Xiao Jin. They had witnessed strange things before. If it happened to Xiao Jin, it would be too shocking. Mu Zilian and Mu Zichu followed in. Mu Zilian said first, "You." He was quick to speak and seemed to want to say something, but Xiao Fei glared at him and he retracted his words. He probably wanted to say something that would provoke a beating, but considering that Xiao Jin had just woken up, he didn't dare to say it. Mu Zichu looked deeply at Xiao Jin and said, "It's good that you're awake." Yes, it was good as long as she was awake. Xiao Jin smiled at them and said softly, "I'm fine." No matter where she was, the Mu family still cared about her, as usual. "Why were you in a coma for 2 months?" Mu Xiangshan paced around the ward and couldn't help but ask Xiao Jin about it. Xiao Jin thought for a moment and said, "I'm not too sure. After all, I don't even know why I was in a coma. She just woke up." Mu Zichu looked at Mu Xiangshan and said softly, "There are some things that you shouldn't ask for now. When she remembers, she will tell you." After all, she had already told them a lot of things, even the world of spiritual psychics. There was no reason for her to hide some unimportant things. Unless it was dangerous, and he didn't want them to know. The whole family looked at Xiao Jin. After a while, although Mu Jinming and Mu Qiji were busy at the company, they still rushed over. After confirming that Xiao Jin was fine, they were relieved. After the doctor's examination, Xiao Jin was healthy. Since he had woken up, of course, he could go home. The doctor also reminded him to be careful when he was sleeping. He was afraid that Xiao Jin would faint again. After all, when she fainted, all her vital signs were normal. This was a situation that the doctor had never encountered before. However, the Mu family also knew that the matter of a spiritual reader was quite unimaginable. Therefore, after remembering the doctor's instructions, they helped Xiao Jin with the discharge procedures and let her leave the hospital. Mo Jiang and you also rushed over at this time. When Mo Jiang saw that Xiao Jin had woken up, he was also relieved. "You're finally awake." Xiao Jin nodded. "I was in a coma for 2 months. Was there anything else?"
No.
Mo Jiang shook his head. "They're all fine. They just asked where you went. I told them that you went to do something." Usually, he didn't see Meng Qingyu and the others every day. Since he was in a coma, there were some things that didn't need to be explained. Xiao Jin replied with an and took the opportunity to ask, "Have you finished filming?"
Yes.
Mo Jiang rolled his eyes. "I killed Qing not long ago. Yes, she wanted to invite me to celebrate the new year with him."
Dream on.
Xiao Jin chuckled. Mo Jiang said, "Do you want to know what happened 2 months ago?" Xiao Jin nodded. This was natural. Otherwise, he would have asked Mo Jiang to come over. Chapter 10:22. What Mo Jiang said was similar to what Song Yanqing said. At that time, she and you had been waiting outside. After all, Xiao Jin said that if they didn't come out in 24 hours, they would leave. The pressure in the underwater world was too great. If Xiao Jin was trapped in the time formation point, they couldn't stay for long. Mo Jiang also saw Mo Huan and the others behind her. However, she didn't know who Mo Huan was. She only saw that someone led a team to the underwater world. Unfortunately, they died before they reached the inside. One of the men walked to the innermost part of the palace and saw Mo Jiang. He seemed to be a little surprised. Then he didn't stay. Instead, he left after seeing Mo Jiang. He left immediately. He didn't even plan to fight with me. Mo Jiang clicked his tongue. I don't know who that man is. The one in your house said that he was Mo Huan. He probably has some connection with you. I could feel that he was very powerful at that time. I just don't know why he didn't want to fight with me. Xiao Jin's eyes moved. He wanted to enter the time formation point. Mo Jiang, I'm not sure. He left too decisively. He might have come for something else. Didn't you want to take something from the time formation point?
Did you get it?
After all, it was this thing that led them to Iceland in the beginning. Xiao Jin was silent for a moment. Then she said, I'm not sure. She didn't know what she wanted to take. She might have gotten it. She might not have gotten it. After all, she was in a coma for 2 months. It's okay. You must have a premonition whether you got it or not. Mo Jiang said, you should leave the hospital now. You were in a coma for 2 months. There must be something wrong with the time. You were lucky. At least it's better than the pile of bones in the underwater world. Xiao Jin was silent. The pile of bones was the best proof. There were thousands of them. Since ancient times, countless people wanted to enter the time formation point. Some people went in and some didn't. After all, the power of the time turbulence was different. Some people died before they could even get close. And to be able to enter the time array point, what was he looking for? It was nothing more than the past and the future. The thing that led Xiao Jin to the time array point was hidden inside. She chatted with Mo Jiang for a while, and then with you. You just looked at Xiao Jin with an obedient look. Sister Xiao Jin. Xiao Jin touched his face and asked softly, would you have fainted when you saw me? You shook her head honestly. I can't see the secret of Sister Xiao Jin. It was true that he was a spiritualist, but his abilities were still too weak. He couldn't see through Xiao Jin. Therefore, it was impossible to predict Xiao Jin's future. After all, even Song Yanqing didn't foresee it. Of course, these things couldn't be foreseen. Otherwise, Xiao Jin wouldn't necessarily enter the time array point. After going through the discharge procedures, Xiao Jin went home with the Mu family. Because the new year was approaching, the Song family had a lot of things to do. Song Yanqing sent Xiao Jin back to the Mu family and then returned to the Song family. This year, they also discussed that if possible, the two families would spend the new year together. After all, the matter between Mu Qiji and Song Suyu also needed a proper decision. The two of them also had no objection to seeing each other. Moreover, Xiao Jin and Song Yanqing were originally dating. This year, the Song family would come over. As the new year was approaching, because Xiao Jin had just woken up, Xiao Fei had a plan. Chapter 10:23. Mom hasn't been very happy with you lately. Let's go to the hot springs at Dongshan Garden. Dongshan Garden was a very famous tourist hotel in the capital. However, it was on the mountainside and had hot springs. It would take a day to come and go, so they would definitely stay there for 2 days before coming back. The hot springs there had a good reputation, and there were very skilled masseuses. Most importantly, it was very close to a temple. If they wanted to go, they could also go to the temple to pray. When Xiao Jin heard Xiao Fei's suggestion, he smiled and said, sure. Do Jinming and the others have time? As long as I say go, they will definitely have time. Xiao Fei couldn't help but complain. It's almost the new year. How can they still be so busy? Our family doesn't have much time to gather. Let's just stay there for 2 days.
Look at you.
You haven't enjoyed anything. You've been running around outside all day. Xiao Jin said, should I call Yanqing? Xiao Fei glanced at her and teased, Jin, you're different now that you have a boyfriend. Do you have to call me wherever you go? I don't mind if you call me Mom, but you have to ask if Lord Song has time. Xiao Jin said again, then I won't. After all, we're going as a family. Xiao Fei. Alright, whatever. Because this was Xiao Jin's first trip after waking up from his coma, the family didn't have any objections to going to Dongshan Garden. However, Muzillion said nonsense. Why do we have to go to Dongshan Garden? We can go abroad. Xiao Fei interrupted him directly. What are you going for? Your sister came back after something happened abroad. Also, your dad and the others are so busy. It's good enough that they can spare a day or two. How can they have so much time to go abroad with us? If you're bored, we'll go to the hot springs. You can go abroad alone. Muzillion. He shut his mouth resentfully. Mu Xiangshan glanced at him and said, you know you'll get scolded for talking.
Just don't say it.
Muzillion. The plan was thus set. On the first weekend after Xiao Jin woke up, Mu Jinming and Mu Qiji took some time out to sit in a 7-seater black commercial car. Otherwise, there would be one more person in the small car. At that time, Xiao Fei wanted to exclude Muzillion. Unfortunately, Muzillion was thick-skinned and insisted on coming, so he did not succeed. The driver was Mu Jinming. Mu Xiangshan sat in the front passenger seat. Xiao Jin, the patient who had just woken up, sat in the middle window. Next to him was Xiao Fei. The three brothers squeezed in the back 3 seats. There was just enough space in one car. Because everyone was here today, Muzillion was especially well-behaved. It was a 2-hour drive to the East Mountain residence. Xiao Jin looked at the scenery outside the car window. No one knew what he was thinking. While driving, Mu Jinming asked Xiao Jin, Jin, do you feel uncomfortable after waking up? Xiao Jin shook his head with a smile. No, Jinming. Don't worry, I'm very healthy. Mu Xiangshan said, it's not easy to say that you've been in a coma for 2 months. Even if your body looks healthy, you can't let your guard down. What if you've been cursed by someone else? It's not like this hasn't happened before. Ever since Guijesher's corpse came back to life, I feel that anything is possible. It seemed that Guijesher's corpse coming back to life had left a certain degree of trauma in his heart. Xiao Jin laughed and said, Grandpa, I'm really fine. If I've been cursed, I'll feel it myself. No one had the ability to place a curse on her. Moreover, Chapter 10:24. She smiled and didn't say anything else. Muzillion, who was behind them, was a little frightened. There's such a thing as a curse? Could it be that all the ghosts in the entertainment industry are real? Xiao Jin glanced at him and explained in a friendly manner, you can't say that there's no such thing. Different abilities of a psychic have different effects. There may be curses, or there may be blessings. Mu Qiji was calm and elegant as usual. Jin, is it difficult for ordinary people to become a psychic? Xiao Jin nodded. I've said it before. Psychics are either born with awakening or they're stimulated later on. Your family is happy and peaceful. There's no chance. Everyone. In the end, Xiao Jin was the only one who was unhappy. At the mention of this, Xiao Fei was about to cry again. Xiao Jin immediately changed the topic. How much longer until we arrive? Mu Jinming looked at the route. There's still more than an hour. If you're tired, you can sleep for a while. In order to see the scenery, they set off early. Of course, Xiao Jin wouldn't sleep. She just looked at the scenery outside the window. The 3 brothers in the back were sleepy, except for Mu Qiji, who was still very energetic. Muzillion sat in the car rocking, and his head leaned on Mu Qiji's shoulder. Muzichu in the back was the same. Mu Qiji sighed silently, but he didn't move. The car gradually quieted down. There were still many cars in the suburbs, and they could see familiar scenery along the way. Dongshan Garden was called Dongshan Garden. It was located on the mountainside outside the city. It was a very luxurious hotel. Some of the rooms' windows were even close to the cliff, which looked very exciting. However, the security here was very high, so was the cost of living here. Basically, a normal room cost 5,000 yuan a night. If it was a better room, it would cost tens of thousands. The Mu family didn't lack money, but they couldn't book the best room. After all, there was no shortage of people all year round, so they booked the best suite. 2 people to a room. Xiao Fei was worried about sharing a room with Xiao Jin, so Mu Jinming couldn't move in. He shared a suite with his father. Anyway, there were 2 bedrooms in a suite. It was fine for the remaining 3 brothers to squeeze into a suite. The rooms here were very luxurious. They were lucky enough to book a room around the mountainside. Yes, it was the kind that looked like a cliff from the outside. It was scary, but it was also really exciting. There was a transparent circular staircase in midair. Many people were taking pictures of it as a souvenir. It was also a famous scenic spot. The hot spring was at the top of the mountain and could be reached through the hotel's special elevator. There were many people living here. They were either internet celebrities or rich kids, but most of them were here for a vacation. When the members of the Mu family appeared here, they met several acquaintances. Mu Qiji and Mu Jinming were busy wherever they went. When they met acquaintances, they also had to chat about business matters. After all, this was a social gathering and couldn't be ignored. Xiao Fei first brought Xiao Jin and the rest to the hotel's restaurant for a buffet. When Xiao Jin went over, her outstanding temperament attracted the attention of the people around her. When she went to eat, she stood in front of a dazzling array of exquisite food and chose what she wanted to eat. However, after hesitating for a long time, she didn't pick up anything. It was as if she was in a daze. Suddenly, a careful voice came from the side. "Hello, miss, do you have any questions? I can recommend our restaurant signature for you." Xiao Jin turned around and saw a girl in a waitress's uniform. Chapter 10:25. She looked like she was about the same age as Xiao Jin. She was also a young girl with exquisite features. Her makeup made her look pleasing to the eyes. However, what caught people's attention was her voice. Her voice was especially pleasant to the ears, like an oriole in a mountain stream. Her voice was as clear as spring water, with a tinkling sound. They just couldn't help but like her voice. This kind of voice was extremely suitable to be a voice actress. Even if she didn't change her voice, she could still seduce a large number of people. Her voice was so pleasant to the ears that it made people feel that the exquisite but not beautiful face in front of them didn't match her voice. Xiao Jin didn't feel anything special. She glanced at the girl in front of her and saw the nameplate on her chest. Fan Zhaoyao. Zhaoyao? That wasn't a good word. What kind of parents would give their daughter such a name? Or maybe it just meant something else, or maybe they were overthinking it. Xiao Jin, on the other hand, was all smiles. "Sure, you can introduce them to me." Fan Zhaoyao saw that she agreed and was very friendly. She heaved a sigh of relief and immediately introduced the hotel's specialties to her politely. When the 2 of them were talking, a lot of people saw them. Among them was a group of rich second-generation heirs who were eating in the distance. Although they were all eating politely, one could tell from the evil smiles on their faces that they weren't ordinary rich second-generation heirs who knew how to play. One of the slightly chubby boys spoke to the most elegant boy. "Su Yun, when she's facing you, her face is cold. When she's facing others, she's smiling quite happily." The fatty pointed his chin in Fan Zhaoyao's direction. The boy named Su Yun paused and looked at Fan Zhaoyao. Instantly, he saw Fan Zhaoyao smiling sweetly at Xiao Jin. He immediately thought of the reluctance on her face when she came over to greet them. It was indeed uncomfortable. Fuck, let's not talk about other things. Just that girl's looks, that temperament. The fatty looked at Xiao Jin with a trace of infatuation in his eyes. What a good girl. Just as he finished speaking, someone's expression suddenly changed. He quickly pinched the fatty's arm and said, "Don't talk nonsense if you don't want to die. Do you know who she is? She's the girlfriend of that guy from the Song family." Fatty's expression changed. The Song family? Is it the Song family that I'm thinking of? What else? The person who spoke didn't even dare to raise his head. He didn't dare to look at Xiao Jin. How many Song family members in the capital are worth us being so afraid of? Fatty's face paled, and he didn't dare to look at Xiao Jin, nor did he dare to speak carelessly. They were just a bunch of mischievous rich second-generation heirs, but they also knew that some people were not to be trifled with. The Song family was a family that they couldn't even come into contact with, but it didn't affect them from hearing about it. Everyone inside had heard of his name. Although she had never heard of the Mu family, the words girlfriend of the Song family were enough. Fatty immediately rejoiced that no one had heard him. The boy named Su Yun didn't listen. However, his attention wasn't on Xiao Jin, even if Xiao Jin was more eye-catching than Fan Zhaoyao. His gaze was still fixed on Fan Zhaoyao, hiding a desire to plunder. She smiled at others but was cold to herself.
She was used to it.
Thinking of this, Su Yun turned his head. On the other side of the room, no one noticed that Xiao Jin had glanced over. Chapter 10:26. Listening to Fan Zhaoyao's introduction, Xiao Jin casually chose the hotel's signature dish. Because the main dish was a buffet, many people came to eat. When Xiao Jin carried the plate over, Fan Zhaoyao followed behind them and asked enthusiastically what they wanted. It was as long as they were busy, they could ignore others temporarily. Xiao Fei didn't like to peel prawns, so she asked Fan Zhaoyao to peel them for her. However, she didn't pay much attention to the waitress here. She just ate and said to Xiao Jin, "Jin, let's go to the hot spring in the afternoon?" Fan Zhaoyao, who was helping to handle the lobsters, was stunned. So her name was Jin? The guests' names were registered at the front desk, so they didn't have the right to know. Xiao Jin didn't care and nodded. She had already met the person she wanted to meet. After handling the lobsters, Fan Zhaoyao said softly to them, "Guests, please enjoy." Her voice attracted Xiao Fei's attention. She glanced at Fan Zhaoyao subconsciously and praised her with a smile. "Your voice is very nice." It wasn't the first time Fan Zhaoyao had heard someone praise her voice. In fact, she was used to it. However, sometimes it wasn't a good thing to be praised here. However, the person in front of her was a beautiful and elegant lady. She smiled happily. "Thank you, madam." Xiao Fei also smiled. Since there was nothing else, Fan Zhaoyao could only go elsewhere to ask other guests. At this moment, Xiao Jin noticed from the corner of her eye that she was called over by a few boys at a table not far away. It was the group of rich second-generation heirs that she had just seen. "Jin, why are you looking at her?" Xiao Fei's senses were sharp and she noticed Xiao Jin's gaze. Xiao Jin just said lightly, "I also think her voice is nice." Is that so?" Xiao Fei glanced at Fan Zhaoyao and couldn't help but be curious. "I heard that they have voice actors now." "Oh, right, voice actors are very popular. This girl can do all these. Why is she working here as a waitress?" Although the hotel was very formal, he didn't know how much they earned. If Fan Zhaoyao worked here, it would be a waste of her good voice. Xiao Jin pursed his lips and smiled. "It's a personal choice." At this moment, a sudden change occurred. Everyone in the restaurant heard a voice. "What's wrong with you?" Xiao Jin and Xiao Fei also looked over subconsciously. It was Fan Zhaoyao. She looked very nervous, and her face was pale. She squatted down to pick up the plate. It turned out that the plate had fallen. Unfortunately, the handsome guy in front of her was still stained with the remains of pasta. It was obvious that the plate had been accidentally dropped on him. The person who had scolded him was his friend. Fan Zhaoyao's face turned pale with fright. She kept apologizing. "I'm sorry, I didn't do it on purpose." "I'm sorry, I'm really sorry." She didn't dare to say that it was the person in front of her who had blocked her hand on purpose. However, the other party was a guest. She looked at the man who she had poured pasta on. He was slowly wiping his expensive shirt with a tissue. His eyes were very deep, as if a storm was brewing. However, the commotion was too big, and the people around them noticed it. The restaurant manager on duty immediately went over to apologize to the guests and asked Fan Zhaoyao to clean up and leave. Actually, the manager on duty had seen it, but he couldn't say anything. After all, everyone here was a guest. No matter whose fault it was, it could only be the waitress' fault. Chapter 10:27. Are all the waiters in your hotel like this? One of the fat men sneered. If you have any dissatisfaction, just say it. Why are you throwing plates to vent your anger? His sarcastic tone made Fan Zhaoyao's scalp numb. If he complained, she wouldn't be able to keep her salary this month. The manager on duty also smiled apologetically. I'm so sorry. It's our mistake that caused your loss and unhappiness. We will compensate you. The other guests didn't understand the cause and effect. They just looked and shook their heads slightly. The waiters definitely didn't do it on purpose. The fat man looked a little aggressive, which naturally made people feel bad. At this moment, Mu Jinming and the others who had finished their discussion also came in. When they saw the farce, they walked over while watching. Xiao Jin heard Xiao Fei complaining to her in a low voice. It's not easy for them. If they knocked the plate over, so be it. They didn't do it on purpose. Why are they so fierce? Xiao Jin turned around and smiled. They did it on purpose. Xiao Fei's eyes widened. On purpose. Xiao Jin nodded. The man knocked the plate over on purpose. I saw it. She didn't see it, but she saw it through the array. Xiao Fei was speechless. What kind of quality was this? She wanted to cry out for the little girl. What's wrong? Mu Jinming and the others walked over. The family of a handsome man and beautiful woman was too eye-catching. It attracted the attention of some of the restaurant's guests. Xiao Fei said to Mu Jinming, that little girl's plate was knocked over on purpose. The guest even blamed it on her. This is too much. Why are you targeting her? Mu Jinming frowned slightly. You saw it? Xiao Fei said. Jean saw it. He was silent for a moment. It's hard to say without evidence. In fact, it was someone else's business. They didn't have to interfere. Xiao Jin didn't intend to interfere. It was one thing for her to see it. The corner of her mouth curled up. She just looked over there with interest. Fan Zhaoyao's apology did not get the other party's forgiveness. The fatty insisted that she did it on purpose and wanted to lodge a complaint and ask for compensation. However, they probably felt that other people were looking at them, including Xiao Jin. They didn't dare to look away, obviously feeling a little guilty. Fan Zhaoyao knew that her bonus and salary for this month were going to be gone. She couldn't care less that she was in a restaurant. She burst into tears. She wiped her tears and cried in grievance. The guests could also see that, and the group of people immediately became a little embarrassed. Su Yun's eyes flashed, and she immediately said, Forget it, I didn't say I would complain about you. Seeing her cry, he realized that he had gone overboard. The manager on duty also apologized. He knew that Fan Zhaoyao's crying wasn't good, so he pushed her down. Immediately, another manager came over to smooth things over. The fat man glanced at Su Yun and used his eyes to signal that he was not going to continue. Then wouldn't this act be for nothing? Su Yun pursed his lips. He couldn't bear to see her cry, especially when she was crying so miserably. This farce was just a diversion in the restaurant. Soon, Su Yun and the others also left. Xiao Jin turned his head back. Muzillian said, You don't look like someone who likes to watch gossip. Xiao Jin, I like it, especially watching her gossip. Muzillian. This was too much. Xiao Fei saw that Muzillian was rebuked and laughed. At the same time, he said worriedly, That girl won't be fired, right? That was too unreasonable. Chapter 10:28. But no one answered her. After all, they didn't know the waiter. It was hard for them to meddle in other people's affairs. Moreover, the people in this hotel all had their own identities. Xiao Fei was worried, but she still had her own things to do. After dinner, she took Xiao Jin to the hot springs. The hot springs here were all independent. Only a few ladies were allowed to enter at a time to avoid a messy environment. Some of them could even call for a massage technician. They were all very formal and professional, the kind with certificates. Xiao Jin had never soaked in a hot spring before, and she had to strip down to her underwear. She wasn't used to exposing her body in front of others, even if it was a woman. Therefore, she still wore enough gauze to cover her body. There was also a bathrobe by the shore. The hot springs were built on the top of the mountain. For privacy, there were indoor hot springs with soundproofing and outdoor hot springs on the top of the mountain. They were simply separated. Xiao Jin and the others chose an indoor hot spring. It was quiet all around. Only she and Xiao Fei were around. But Xiao Jin still heard a girl crying. That voice was too familiar. It was Fan Zhaoyao. Xiao Jin got up from the hot spring and suddenly said, Fei Fei, I'm going to the bathroom. You can soak first. Go, go. It was very comfortable to soak in the hot spring. Xiao Fei didn't want to go out for a while. She closed her eyes and just waved her hand lazily. Xiao Jin put on her bathrobe and tied the belt around her waist. When she walked out, she saw the waiter in the corridor when she opened the door. Someone saw her nod, and the crying became more obvious. Xiao Jin saw two people standing in front of the hot spring door on the men's side. They looked sneaky. They were the two people from the rich second-generation group. When Xiao Jin walked over, one of them saw her and his face twitched. Miss Xiao. Xiao Jin was interested. You know me? That person said nervously. I know you are young Master Song's girlfriend. No matter what, someone who Song Yanqing had publicly acknowledged as his girlfriend was definitely not to be trifled with.
Oh.
Xiao Jin did not mind and asked casually, who's inside? They were indoors and soundproof. Logically speaking, they shouldn't be able to hear anything. When they heard Xiao Jin's question, they immediately felt their scalps go numb. They stammered, Our friends are inside. We were just about to go in, however, the two of them didn't dare to open the door. What if they heard something that shouldn't be heard? Then why aren't you going in? Xiao Jin smiled. You've been standing at the door. People who don't know might think that you're guarding against something. The voice gradually became softer. At the same time, Xiao Jin heard the man's angry curses and the sound of something falling into the water. Apparently, he had been pushed into the water. And this male voice, it was the fatty from earlier. Suddenly, another boy walked over. It was the most good-looking Su Yun. He saw the two of them guarding the door. Xiao Jin was also there.
He was a little surprised.
What are you doing here? Don't you want to go in? One of them turned pale. Didn't you say that you didn't want to come in when you were sleeping? Su Yun said, I can't sleep. I came up to the hot spring to relax. I called a few male technicians. They'll be here later. As he spoke, he pushed the door open and went in. However, the two of them blocked him and hesitated. Su Yun suddenly frowned. What are you doing? Xiao Jin said, I just saw your friend pull a girl in. The two of them suddenly looked at Xiao Jin in horror. Chapter 10:29. What did she see? She shouldn't have seen anything. When Su Yun heard this, he thought of something and realized that something was wrong. His face changed and he pushed the two of them away and opened the door. The girls' cries came out directly. In the hot spring, Fan Zhaoyao stood there, crying and kicking the fat man. The fat man was still cursing in the water. It seemed that he wanted to drag Fan Zhaoyao down. When the two of them heard the movement outside, they were stunned. The fat man turned his head and saw Su Yun.
His face changed.
Su Yun. Fan Zhaoyao also stopped crying for a moment. Su Yun's scalp exploded. What the hell are you doing? The fat man's upper body was naked, and his lower body was in the water. It seemed that he was only wearing a pair of underwear. Xiao Jin didn't want to see it. It hurt his eyes. She watched the scene at the door. The two of them looked at her with some resentment in their eyes, but they didn't dare to provoke her. The fat man didn't know what to say. He could only say, I helped you vent your anger, this woman. Do I need you to do it? Su Yun walked over and kicked the fat man's head. He immediately kicked him into the water. He didn't dare to kick him too hard. He just wanted to vent his anger. Fan Zhaoyao glanced at him and saw Xiao Jin at the door. She ran over. She was wet all over. She was wearing a waiter's clothes. But now that she was drenched, she only had a white shirt on her upper body. It looked a little transparent. Xiao Jin glanced at her and asked a passing waiter to bring a bathrobe to cover her. Fan Zhaoyao smiled at her gratefully.
Thank you, Miss Xiao.
She knew from others that this extremely good-looking guest was called Xiao Jin. The fat man came out of the water and cursed. Su Yun, are you crazy? I helped you vent your anger, and you hit me? Did I let you vent your anger like this? Soo-yun was trembling with anger. When he saw the fat man coming up, he kicked him again. The two brothers naturally didn't dare to stop him. They couldn't watch Soo-yun hit the fat man. They could only stop Soo-yun together. Xiao Jin let Fan Zhaoyao leave. Fan Zhaoyao was scared out of her wits. Xiao Jin said softly, "If you're scared, just resign." Fan Zhaoyao trembled, tears streaming down her face. I don't know. What else can I do? She needed this job very much. The customers here would tip her, and the salary was not low as long as she worked hard. She had an elderly mother who needed to be taken care of. Her monthly living expenses and hospital expenses were crushing her. Not to mention, she had an alcoholic father and a vampire relative who visited her from time to time. She really couldn't leave this place. But now, she was terrified. It was the first time she had encountered such a thing. If Soo-yun had not suddenly kicked the door, she did not know what would have happened to her. There were even people guarding the door. Even in a hotel, something like this could happen. Fan Zhaoyao knew that no one would stand up for her, not even the hotel. These guests were all powerful and influential. They could easily suppress them, so she didn't dare to call the police. Her life couldn't afford any accidents anymore. Even so, she still trembled and looked at Xiao Jin. Her eyes were red and tears fell down one by one. Thank you, Miss Qiao. She didn't know why Xiao Jin was also outside the door, but she intuitively felt that Xiao Jin had also saved her. Xiao Jin looked at her meaningfully. It's okay to be afraid. After all, it hasn't happened yet, and won't happen again. Chapter 1030. Fan Zhaoyao cried in a daze. She didn't quite understand what Xiao Jin meant. However, she understood that it probably meant that this matter didn't happen. She nodded and said in a nasal voice, "Thank you so much." Xiao Jin looked at Soo-yun meaningfully and said, "I'll leave first." Fan Zhaoyao was actually still a little scared, but she nodded. She knew that she couldn't continue to work here. Otherwise, she didn't know what would happen to her. Today's matter was a huge blow to her. Fan Zhaoyao saw Xiao Jin leave and could only follow behind her. However, it wasn't the same route. After a while, Xiao Jin returned to the indoor hot spring where Xiao Fei and her were. Xiao Fei opened her eyes and looked at her. She was a little puzzled. "Why did you come back so late?" "Xiao Jin, something happened?" Xiao Fei was a little surprised. "What happened?" Xiao Jin shook her head. "Nothing. I just saw something interesting. It's all in the past." Seeing that Xiao Jin didn't say anything, Xiao Fei was too lazy to ask. As she spoke, she thought of Fan Zhaoyao this morning. "Speaking of which, I don't know what happened to the little girl this morning. She looked so pitiful at such a young age. She was even framed by a customer." Xiao Jin was a little curious. Fei, why are you so concerned about a little girl?" Xiao Fei turned around and said, "I just feel that the little girl is a little pitiful. She looks so pitiful. Alas, look at how she cried in the restaurant today. Mom is old and can't bear to see such a scene." Xiao Jin was deep in thought. "Then we should have chosen to help her. But it's not easy to help. Just like your uncle Jinming said, we don't have any evidence." Xiao Fei patted her face. I'm a little tight. I want to apply a facial mask. Jean, can Mom find a masseuse to massage us?" Xiao Jin smiled and said, "Up to you." For the rest of the time, Xiao Jin enjoyed the hot spring in peace. When they left the hotel, they didn't see Fan Zhaoyao again. Xiao Fei even muttered a few words. He was probably afraid that something would happen to the little girl. She didn't know that Fan Zhaoyao almost had an accident yesterday. Xiao Jin knew that Fan Zhaoyao had probably resigned and left. She went to the East Mountain residence to soak in the hot spring and stayed there for a day. At least it dispelled the haze of Xiao Jin's coma for 2 months. As it was nearing the Chinese New Year, the school was already on holiday. Now, Xiao Jin had nothing to do at home all day. She didn't go anywhere. When she had nothing to do, she would play chess with Mu Xiangshan. It made people wonder if she had changed her temperament. Song Yanqing called Xiao Jin the next day. He didn't know about the hotel, but he knew that Xiao Jin and the others had gone to the East Mountain residence. If it weren't for the fact that he didn't have time, he would probably have gone with them. He called to ask if Xiao Jin had a good time. Xiao Jin's answer was as straightforward as ever. Yes. She smiled and said, I also met something very interesting.
Oh?
Song Yanqing seemed a little surprised. What interesting thing? This time, Xiao Jin didn't answer directly. Instead, she asked with a smile, when are you free? Let's meet, and I'll tell you. Song Yanqing pondered for a moment. In the next 2 days. I'll come and find you after I'm done. It's almost the Chinese New Year, and there are a lot of things to deal with. Xiao Jin answered obediently, okay, I'll wait for you. Her obedient voice made Song Yanqing's heart soften.
Okay.
Chapter 1031. After hanging up the phone, Qiao Fei heard Xiao Jin and Song Yanqing talking on the phone. He sighed. They are so lovey-dovey. She was no longer the Xiao Jin of the past. The Xiao Jin of the past was so arrogant and cold. Xiao Jin glanced at Qiao Fei, smiled, and said nothing. At this moment, Mu Qilian came downstairs. When she saw Xiao Jin and Qiao Fei, she did not say anything. She only said, Mom, I have an appointment. I'll go out first. My friend is waiting for me. Where are you going? Xiao Fei seemed to be unhappy if he did not rebuke him. Can't you take your sister out to play? Isn't she bored staying at home all day? I'm going out with my friend. How can I bring her along? Muzilian looked reluctant. Xiao Jin looked at him thoughtfully. Did you get a new girlfriend during the 2 months I was in a coma? Muzilian, nonsense. Xiao Fei's eyes widened. Which girl did you ruin this time? Muzilian quickly denied. Don't listen to her. Look at her tone. People who don't know will think that I did something. My social network has nothing to do with you. Don't talk nonsense. Xiao Fei looked at him meaningfully. You really didn't? Muzilian would make it clear if he dated her before. There was no reason for him to hide it. Muzilian, I really didn't. He glared at Xiao Jin and then went out by himself. He was probably going to have fun with his friends. After he left, Xiao Fei still scolded him. I don't know what he's doing. He goes out every day. His sister just woke up, and he doesn't even care about her. Xiao Fei kept saying that Xiao Jin had just woken up. Xiao Jin smiled and said, I already said that I'm fine. You don't have to worry too much. Didn't the doctor say that I'm in good health? It's not like the doctor knows what happened to you. Xiao Fei was still grumbling. You won't be going out these few days. It's almost the new year. You should stay at home so that Mom won't be worried. You don't have anything to do outside recently, right? Xiao Jin shook his head.
No.
Xiao Fei said, that's good. He Yao and the others called Xiao Jin. After asking about Xiao Jin, they said that the spirit group didn't have much to do recently. The matters in Shengdu were always in need of people. It just so happened that Mo Jiang had recently accepted a new film contract, and he would be filming in Shengdu for a period of time. The spirit team decided to let Mo Jiang take over the position of the president in Shengdu. He wanted Mo Jiang to deal with the people in Shengdu. This idea was truly vicious. With Mo Jiang's temper, the people in Shengdu would be dealt with miserably. But it was the best choice. After all, only someone like Mo Jiang could suppress Shengdu. Xiao Jin had other things to do and couldn't be bothered to care about a small Shengdu. Mo Jiang wasn't too happy at first. But after knowing that he had the money to buy a villa, he didn't say anything. Xiao Jin wandered around for the past few days. He just strolled on the streets and nothing special happened. Every day, he would call Song Yanqing and occasionally video call her. He seemed to be very busy. This kind of life was comfortable and fulfilling. Until Song Yanqing finally finished her work, she called Xiao Jin to meet her at the same old place. It was noon. Xiao Jin arrived and saw Song Yanqing wearing a black sweater with a cat in her arms. She was as precious as jade. She had the elegant demeanor in his memory. When she saw Xiao Jin, her smile could make time pale.
Jean.
Chapter 1032. That voice also contained an absolute longing. Xiao Jin walked over and sat across from Song Yanqing and saw Ding Dang in his arms. Ding Dang still had the same chubby appearance, and when she saw Xiao Jin, she was a little vigilant. Xiao Jin glanced at her. Why did you bring her out? Recently, she has been pestering my sister at home, making it difficult for her to work. Today, I just happened to have time, so I brought her out. Ding Dang was being caressed by Song Yanqing's palm. While comfortably nestled in his embrace, she still had to vigilantly look at Xiao Jin, always on guard against Song Yanqing handing her over to Xiao Jin. Xiao Jin looked at Ding Dang and suddenly said, That's great. What's great? Song Yanqing raised her head, picked up the teacup, and took a sip. What did you say that day that you wanted to tell me? Did you find something interesting in the hotel? Later on, I found out about a rich second-generation fighting.
You were there that day.
That's right. Xiao Jin answered happily. She supported her cheek with one hand and looked at Song Yanqing. There, I found the sixth formation point. It was really a pleasant surprise. The sixth? Song Yanqing laughed in a low voice. You met it so quickly. It seems like the remaining ones aren't far away. That's right, an interesting girl. Xiao Jin thought for a moment and said, Actually, it's also very slow. Up until now, it's only the sixth. Why don't you show the remaining three together? This way, wouldn't it be good to let me know what will happen when the 9 formation points are gathered together? Song Yanqing paused for a moment, stroked the cat, and bloomed a beautiful smile. She looked curiously at Xiao Jin. Then what do you think will happen when the 9 formation points are gathered together? Xiao Jin asked him back. Do you really not remember what happened in the array formations? Song Yanqing sighed. Jin, I know you want to know, but I really forgot everything at that time. At this point, he looked at Xiao Jin. Could it be that you've remembered? Xiao Jin shook his head. I didn't. Song Yanqing reached out and touched Xiao Jin's head. It's okay. Take it slow and let nature take its course. Everything will be cleared up. You will know what happened to you sooner or later. Xiao Jin smirked. Even Fan Zhaoyao has appeared. When will the other 3 appear? Song Yanqing frowned. Didn't you say that these things can't be rushed? No matter how rushed you are, it will be too late. Xiao Jin poured himself a cup of tea and looked at Ding Dang. Suddenly, he reached out his hand to touch her. Ding Dang was so scared that her hair stood up and her back arched. It seemed that she was still afraid of Xiao Jin. Song Yanqing gently stroked Ding Dang and said in a low voice, Ding Dang, she is your future mistress. Ding Dang. I won't listen, I won't listen. Xiao Jin saw Ding Dong's appearance and laughed. Actually, letting Fan Zhaoyao appear early was a bit rushed. I could have let the other 3 appear early. If I didn't go to the Eastern Mountain Garden, I wouldn't have met Fan Zhaoyao. Song Yanqing touched Ding Dong's back and slowly raised his head. His eyes were deep. Wasn't it arranged by your family to relax? You meeting Fan Zhaoyao was fated. Xiao Jin tapped his chin, as if he agreed with Song Yanqing's words. I know it was fated. I just feel that we shouldn't waste time. When will the other 3 appear? Chapter 1033. The smile on Song Yanqing's lips deepened. Jin, why are you asking me? I don't know about these things. His gaze was still the same, incomparably gentle. Jin, you've been unconscious for 2 months. Perhaps you're a little impatient because you haven't remembered anything. Don't be anxious. When you want to know, the other 3 will appear. I was just thinking, why did it have to be 2 months? Xiao Jin looked at Ding Dang, but it was as if he was looking at something else through Ding Dang. I thought about it for a long time, but I still can't figure out why it was 2 months. If the time was shorter, it would be easier for me to fall into it. Moreover, from the start, I shouldn't have appeared in the hospital. I can only guess that the thing I want to get can interrupt my 2-month period of time. So even if it's a time array point, It can't let me return to the beginning of the array formation. The thing I left behind can't be underestimated. 2 months is too much of a failure. Although it doesn't have any effect, I still believe it. Xiao Jin straightened his body and slowly looked at Song Yanqing. His voice was very gentle. What do you think, Yanqing? Song Yanqing stroked the cat's body and slowly sat up straight. He straightened his back and his pitch-black eyes became deeper. It was as if he had discovered something fun. The smile on his face slowly disappeared. When did you feel that something was wrong? It had already been a week. Xiao Jin had discovered it too quickly. Xiao Jin blinked. It's true. I wasn't sure who you were hiding on, but I didn't think that you would dare to hide on my boyfriend. Song Yanqing's smile completely disappeared. At this moment, it was as if he had become a different person. He was still the same person, but his aura had become more and more mysterious. It was as if time had flowed. The person in front of him had a kind of illusion that could make people fall into a trance. It was as if time had stopped in front of him. At this moment, the law array point on Xiao Jin's body suddenly jumped out. The huge round plate only showed 4 words: conforms to the rules. It didn't say what rules it had to abide by. It was too casual. The disc turned with a rumbling sound, and it seemed to make some noise, with a harsh tone, as if it was mocking something. Xiao Jin's own array formation could not be seen by others. However, the moment the law array point appeared, Song Yanqing lifted his eyelids. It was obvious that he had seen the law. Xiao Jin smiled. I told Guanqing before that the array points have their own consciousness. Otherwise, why would the rules choose me? Song Yanqing just looked at her quietly. His appearance was still arrogant and elegant, with a kind of arrogance and indifference, without the initial gentleness. I noticed it right from the start. Xiao Jin's lips curled up, but his voice was calm. It's just to make me believe that you would definitely let me discover something in advance. What I'm looking for is the array point, so you revealed Fan Zhaoyao's whereabouts to me in advance to make me believe that this world is real to me. I guessed right. Song Yanqing also smiled. No, to be precise, the person in front of him was not Song Yanqing. It was the incarnation of the consciousness of the time array point, but it was borrowing Song Yanqing's body. It smiled gently. The cat turned into a shadow from his arms, and everything around seemed to blur in an instant. Its tone was still very gentle. Everything is real. This is your future. So what's wrong? Chapter 1034. The future has to be built on the foundation of things that have already happened. Xiao Jin's tone was very low. You can see my future, but for me, I'm resurrected. You can only extend from this foundation. For me, my future is something that hasn't happened yet. If it hasn't happened, how can you let me go to the future? The time matrix point was a matrix point. It could indeed let people go to the past, the future, and even the deep turbulence of time. But if it could really let a person go to the past or the future at will, then what about the bones that died outside? Its deterrent power was very strong. The real future was the future that could be glimpsed after it was controlled by someone as a matrix point. There was a price to pay for this. Otherwise, why would the rules create the mountain of rules? Anyone who entered would die. It was because they were so powerful that they could not be controlled by anyone. Whether it was coveting or approaching, they would first enter the world of the matrix point. Their goal was to kill everyone who wanted to get close to them. They had consciousness. If the rules had not seen that Xiao Jin had a special demonic spiritual seed, it would not have made a deal with Xiao Jin so easily. The time matrix point could indeed let Xiao Jin go to the future, but that was as an unequal existence. Xiao Jin had rules and devouring. She was on the same level as the time matrix point, but her ability was not enough to cause an obstruction to the time matrix point. Moreover, Xiao Jin was resurrected. In theory, everything about her had not happened yet. She was not a normal human. She had a past but no future. There were also restrictions on the time matrix point. Xiao Jin guessed that the restriction was something that trapped Xiao Jin in the time matrix point 2 months later. Otherwise, The time matrix point could have let Xiao Jin wake up in the underwater world from the beginning. In this way, it could completely confuse Xiao Jin. She might not find any problems at all and think that she had walked out. Then why was it 2 months? This world, including everything else, could be seen as real or fake. Everyone inside was based on the structure of Xiao Jin's real world. This was also the reason why Xiao Fei and the Mu family were so real. Every detail was real. Entering the time array point, there was no difference at all. The only difference was Song Yanqing. There was a mysterious smile on Xiao Jin's face. My future hasn't happened yet. All of your constructions are based on reality. In reality, Song Yanqing is a self-disciplined and principled man. While I was in a coma, it was reasonable for him to return to the company and then deal with the family business. The time matrix in front of him carried Song Yanqing's face. Its expression seemed to be touched. It smiled brightly. Is it because of this? Yes, the problem is that I was unconscious. Xiao Jin put her hand on the table and looked at it calmly. When I was in a coma for 2 months, as a spiritual master, he couldn't even see any information about me. Do you think he could calmly go back to deal with the family business? To him, I'm more important than these things. It raised its eyes slightly and thought deeply. Are you that confident? It's just experience. He won't abandon me. When I woke up in the hospital, I should have seen Song Yanqing, not Fei Fei. Chapter 1035. Even Xiao Fei would come to guard it. But for Song Yanqing, there was nothing more suitable than guarding it himself. Even if he was working, he wouldn't leave Xiao Jin in a coma alone. There was a high probability that he would work directly in the hospital or take Xiao Jin directly to the Song family. So when Xiao Jin woke up, she was surprised to hear that she had been in a coma for 2 months and Song Yanqing was not around. Until she specifically asked Hualing. Everyone told her that Song Yanqing was very sad and afraid that she wouldn't wake up. But he didn't come to guard Xiao Jin. So with this matter, Xiao Jin could completely cut off that this world was fake. But after the time matrix point came, its disguise of Song Yanqing was indeed enough to pass off as the real one. For it, since it was in time, it wasn't difficult for it to create a false template. But in this case, the template of reality it was based on was not correct. Because Xiao Jin and Song Yanqing hadn't had a similar situation. If it hadn't been wrong from the beginning, Xiao Jin wouldn't have found it so quickly. Ha 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 ha, it let out a low laugh and clapped twice. It's very interesting. The huge disc next to it made a creaking sound again, as if it was laughing at the time matrix point. The 4 major matrix points existed and didn't interfere with each other. The most difficult thing to find was space. And time was basically the most difficult thing to obtain. Because of its own problem, it was time. It didn't have a specific shape. Its matrix points might be hidden in the past and the future, which was basically impossible to see. Xiao Jin didn't expect to catch it. It wasn't surprising that it entered the world of the time matrix point. At least it let him see something. The future could be fake, but the past must be real. Do you want to get something? The surrounding world had begun to shatter, but it maintained the original appearance in the shattering. Your guess is correct. Some things are fake, but some things are real. The only difference is that you're not a normal human. You're resurrected, an existence that doesn't conform to the rules. Your future is indeed invisible, but everyone else's future is real. It pointed at the people around it, and the scene spun quickly. Everyone seemed to be showing the various forms of life. Xiao Jin saw many familiar faces. He Yao, Hua Yanming, Chao Yikai, Muzilian, Muzichu, they were all normal people, so they were all under the control of the array point. Their lives were all destined. All of their futures are real. You are the only variable. It looked at her and smiled gently. Do you want to know what happened back then? Of course, I can let you see it. So, are you ready? Xiao Jin took a sip of the tea on the table and said softly, Is this my reward for clearing the stage? Of course not. Consider it a little extra benefit for you. It reached out a finger and lightly tapped. Time changed quickly. In the blink of an eye, Xiao Jin disappeared from the original world. She appeared in the previous world again. She appeared in the empty hall. But this time, she brought her memories with her, clear memories. She knew that it was Xiao Jin who was resurrected 10,000 years later. She also knew that she was the formation master of the Shang He Kingdom 10,000 years ago, Xiao Jin. Chapter 1036. 10,000 years ago, there were indeed a few kingdoms. But whatever happened, they were all buried in the dust of history. If they hadn't disappeared, perhaps the course of history would have been different. Perhaps it was to let Xiao Jin come back and personally see everything that had happened. At this time, although Xiao Jin had the memory of meeting the time formation point, she still didn't know anything about what happened in the kingdom after that. It was as if there was a layer of gauze covering it. Every time she looked at a place, that layer of gauze would slowly unveil its true appearance. There were 4 great kingdoms in this world, and each kingdom had an array master overseeing it. Spiritual force masters were born according to the will of the heavens and were regarded as a power bestowed by the heavens. Because of this power, the kingdom had a different protection from ordinary people. As the strongest array master, Xiao Jin was the guardian of the Shang He Kingdom. She was above the Shang He royal family and was regarded as the existence closest to God. The person she chose was the future heir of the Shang He royal family. Among the spiritual force masters were the rarest. The only spiritual force master who had grown to the extreme was Song Yanqing of the Lian Kingdom. They weren't born to be so respected. Since they were powerful, they had to bear their own mission. At the edge of the kingdom, it should be the center of the ocean, the border between the humans and the Rakshasa world. At this time, it wasn't that the Rakshasa world couldn't come over. They had already begun to gradually infiltrate, wanting to forcefully break through the barrier and slaughter the entire world. Song Yanqing and Xiao Jin had to stop them from coming over. Perhaps from the beginning, the existence of the Rakshasa world and the spiritual force masters complemented each other. It was precisely because of the Rakshasa world that there were spiritual force masters. It was a product created by the heavens and earth to deal with the Rakshasa world. Because of the Rakshasa world's covetous eyes, the royal families had been very restless recently. Something unavoidable must have happened in the future. Since the kingdom had disappeared from the dust of history, it meant that the Rakshasa world had at least rushed over. The humans at that time didn't survive. And they didn't completely complete their plan because there were still people alive who continued the human bloodline. After all, there was still Mo Zhang's Qian Song Kingdom. This was something that didn't exist in this era. The last time she came in, she was pushed out by Song Yanqing. This time, Qiao Shi. Furua's voice came from outside. Xiao Jin turned around and saw Furua running in, panting. There was another disturbance at the border today. Song Shi is going back. With a troubled expression, she said, I don't know when this matter will come to an end. Song Shi has been living at the border all year round, and it's almost impossible for you to meet him. Song Shi. The kingdom respectfully addressed the powerful spiritual readers as teachers. There was no other meaning. It just represented respect and reverence for the spiritual reader. Xiao Jin's eyes flashed. I'll go see him. He didn't know what time period he had returned to, but he was sure that nothing had started yet. Previously, Song Yanqing had pushed her out. He didn't know if the current Song Yanqing could still see that something was wrong with her. Since she knew that this was the past, she wouldn't do anything to the time matrix. She probably really wanted her to see clearly what happened before her resurrection. Furua nodded with some disdain. Teacher, Huan always wants to curry favor with Song Shi. Xiao Jin's eyes flashed slightly. No matter. Song Shi is a spiritual reader. He can't hide his thoughts in front of him. Chapter 1037. Although she didn't know what would happen next, she had a premonition. It was as if everything was vaguely familiar, guiding her on what to do and what to say. The point of time was probably to let her see and experience with her own eyes what had happened in the past. She was originally going to find Song Yanqing, but she didn't go over. Just as she left the hall, Song Yanqing came over. He was still wearing that black cloak, standing in the wind and snow, staring at her. He was as clear as jade, as handsome as bamboo. A man like him was probably born to be pampered. He was the same as Qiao Jin, a person who was favored by the heavens. He didn't have any memories of his birth, but from the moment he was born, he knew his identity as the most noble person in the world. She saw that Song Yanqing's eyes were still filled with that unchanging gentleness. She remembered that the last time she came in, it was Song Yanqing who pushed her out.
He must have seen something.
What could he see this time? He walked towards her. Furuo bowed to Song Yanqing, called out Song Shi, and then withdrew. When Song Yanqing approached Qiao Jin, it was as if the veil covering Qiao Jin's heart was lifted again.
She remembered something.
She and Song Yanqing had an unusual relationship from the beginning. They had been together since the world was born. It was not an ordinary relationship. It was also extraordinarily close. She didn't feel shy, nor was she surprised. She just felt that it was natural. They were born to be together. He walked over and gently held Qiao Jin's wrist. The snow was swirling, but his palm was the warmest source. His voice was as gentle as jade.
Jin.
His calls seemed to be separated by thousands of years. Qiao Jin looked at him. After a long time, the corners of her mouth slowly curved into a smile. She replied, "What can you see from my eyes?" Song Yanqing narrowed his eyes slightly. His pitch-black pupils were reflected in Qiao Jin's eyes. There was only calmness. He smiled and said, "I can't see. What do you want me to see?" Song Yanqing was a spirit master of speech. He could see through a person's past and future. Qiao Jin was currently inside the time array point. Perhaps there was something that could deceive him. Or perhaps he saw it but didn't say anything. Qiao Jin didn't have any special emotions. She just nodded and held his palm. She could feel that whether it was the Song Yanqing from 10,000 years ago or the Song Yanqing from 10,000 years later, they were always the same person. He stroked his hair naturally as he sighed softly. "Jin, the Rakshasa realm's movements are becoming more and more obvious. We won't be able to hold on much longer." The future he saw was not beautiful. Spirit masters of speech were powerful, but they couldn't see everything clearly, no matter how big or small. However, every fragment he saw didn't have any memories of this period of history. This also meant that history would cover them up in the end. Human traces couldn't be completely eliminated. Something must have happened to completely destroy the history of the four great kingdoms. Besides the Rakshasa realm, no one could do such a thing. But at the same time, since there was history, it also proved that humans still existed. Besides the four great ancient kingdoms, there were always remote areas with no traces of life in the world. They lived ordinary lives and continued the fate of humans. They weren't destroyed by the Rakshasa realm, but they also weren't persecuted. So he could see the future. Chapter 1038. It's okay, Qiao Jin said softly. We'll do our best and leave the rest to fate. We'll fulfill our responsibilities. The Shanghe Kingdom and the Lian Kingdom had the most powerful array masters, so they had to take on more responsibilities. Song Yanqing grunted. He put his arm around Qiao Jin's waist and half-hugged her into the house. The black cloak almost covered her entire body. After entering the house, he said, "I'm going back to the border tomorrow." The Rakshasa world had frequent changes, so people couldn't be left there. The others couldn't guard it. Qiao Jin frowned slightly. "I can't leave." The Shanghe Kingdom was going to start the coronation ceremony next month. Mo Fei Jin had already been confirmed as the next heir of the kingdom, but she was an array master and had already sensed something. This time, the ceremony wouldn't go smoothly. The kingdom also had the responsibility of guarding the border. The king had to take care of the people, which was equally important. So she had to stay here and watch the ceremony go smoothly. Song Yanqing's hand around her waist paused. Xiao Jin sensed the change in his mood. She looked up at him. Did you sense something? Mo Fei Jin won't succeed to the throne, right? Song Yanqing only shook his head slightly. In fact, I've never gotten a definite answer to this matter. There were some things he couldn't say, but there were some things he could reveal in a few words. Song Yanqing said this, but it was more dangerous. That also meant that it was a very big thing that would happen during the coronation ceremony. So Song Yanqing couldn't see the specific future. Because, once he saw it, he had an opportunity to change the future. The heavens wouldn't be so merciful. This also indicated that something terrifying was about to happen. Xiao Jin lowered her eyes and thought about her resurrection 10,000 years ago. She sighed slightly. She had already thought about what would happen. The Rakshasa world would break through the border. This was something that was destined. Just like she was here now, experiencing everything that she had experienced before. She couldn't change anything, because to her, everything had already happened. There was no point in changing it, because this was the past in the time matrix. She only needed to find out how she had used the array formation to resurrect, and who had harmed her. Actually, he already had a candidate in mind. The modern Mo Huan, the Shanghai Kingdom's Mo Fei Huan. The only thing she wanted to know was how the other party did it and what the consequences were. Mo Fei Huan didn't have the ability to kill her, and Song Yanqing was by his side. He was able to bypass Song Yanqing's surveillance and kill Xiao Jin. It was very likely that he had already demonized. Or perhaps they had made some sort of deal with the Rakshasa realm. Thinking of this, Xiao Jin's eyes gradually turned cold. Song Yanqing only looked at her appearance, a trace of tenderness flashing through his eyes. His fingertips stroked Xiao Jin's cheek as he said, I will be leaving tomorrow. In this month, you have to be careful. Pay attention to Mo Fei Huan. She nodded. I know. Everyone knew that Mo Fei Huan was ambitious. But he was able to return to the royal family as an illegitimate child. This proved how reckless the current king was. Xiao Jin was an array master, but she didn't directly interfere with the royal family's affairs. If she interfered too much, it would instead arouse the royal family's dissatisfaction. She was high up and close to the gods. They could worship the gods, but they would never allow the gods to interfere with worldly power. Otherwise, even the gods would have to be pulled down from the altar. So chaos didn't matter. She only needed to care about who inherited the throne. Chapter 1039. Song Yanqing was going to leave tomorrow, so he slept here tonight.
He didn't do anything.
He just slept with Xiao Jin in his arms. The two of them covered themselves with a quilt and shared a bed. It was like countless days and nights. This state was very natural. In fact, in modern times, Xiao Jin had never been so intimate with Song Yanqing. Now she took into account her modern memories and looked at Song Yanqing in front of her. It was the exact same face, and the exact same person. There was a sense of tiredness in the depths of his eyebrows. Xiao Jin knew why he was tired. As the most respected spiritual master of speech, he was worshipped by the world, but he was also trapped here for his whole life. He spent most of his life guarding the border. The time he spent with Xiao Jin was the only time he relaxed. She didn't fall asleep. She reached out and gently touched Song Yanqing's face. She probably wouldn't do such a thing in the past. In the past, she was cold and had a tradition of abiding by the rules. After coming to modern times, it really had an impact on her. Perhaps the influence of the Mu family was still too great. Song Yanqing suddenly opened his eyes. The person who had been sleeping opened his eyes as if he had been awake all the time. Seeing this, he leaned over and pecked Xiao Jin's lips. He whispered, What's wrong? Nothing. Xiao Jin lowered her head and only said, It will be fine. Everything will be fine. No matter how he came to the same era as her, she remembered Li Yu's words. When the time was over, no matter what, she would save him. Yes. He smiled. I believe in you. As he spoke, he hugged her tighter. The next morning, Song Yanqing got up and left. He was going to the border. The Shanghe kingdom had begun to be busy because of the coronation ceremony. Mo Feijin had to accept the coronation and was very busy recently. Xiao Jin instructed Furwa to pay attention to Mo Feihuan's movements. Furwa brought her a piece of news. Xiao Shi, Master, Huan went to the border a few days after Song Shi came back. He rushed back very quickly and didn't let anyone know. This in itself was suspicious. Without Song Yanqing guarding the border, it was particularly unstable. Normal psychics would be easily bewitched if they went there, so there were many demonized psychics at the border. It was impossible for Mo Feihuan not to know. He actually went there secretly. Xiao Jin's judgment became more and more certain. Furwa looked at Xiao Jin's calm face and said worriedly, "Xiao Shi, Teacher Huan." Furwa naturally knew what they knew. Mo Feihuan's strength wasn't the strongest, but that was only compared to Xiao Jin. He was already quite strong in the eyes of others, but it was still a bit difficult for him to go to the border. Are we really not going to care? Furwa's whisper made Xiao Jin shake her head. She said calmly, if he wants to do something wrong, no one can stop him. Furwa looked at her in surprise. Xiao Shi, you know what he wants to do? Xiao Jin didn't say anything, but she remembered something. The power of the Rakshasa world at the border was very strong. Normal psychics would be bewitched even if they got close. Song Yanqing was a psychic himself, but he had been there for decades. Over the past few decades, had he been affected at all? Xiao Jin believed him, but she was also sure of one thing. The Rakshasa world had always coveted Song Yanqing's identity as a psychic. It was impossible for them to do nothing for decades. Chapter 1040. After another half a month, the formation masters of the other two kingdoms sent news that the Rakshasa world had begun to move. The demonized spiritual readers were already increasing at a very rapid rate, almost out of control. They all knew very well that the changes in the world were about to arrive. Song Yanqing sent her a message, telling her to prepare for the succession ceremony with peace of mind. At the border, there was no problem for him to hold on for a little while longer. The Rakshasa world had expended too much energy to come over. At present, they could only allow the demonized spiritual readers to move around. Xiao Jin needed to pay attention to this. After all, if she left, it was easy for other abnormal situations to occur in the kingdom. Mo Feijin finally had time and came to find Xiao Jin. Jin. He was now wearing the daily clothes that a king could wear, draped in a luxurious royal robe, but he was still as happy as a child. The current king was dissatisfied with his naivety and kindness, not as decisive as his brother Mo Feihuan. But he didn't understand at all that the current world wasn't like the dynasties in Xiao Jin's later memories. People lived and worked in peace. Only demonized spiritual readers were a threat. In a situation where there were formation masters guarding the country, a kind emperor was a good thing. Mo Feihuan's personality was sinister and didn't tolerate any dissent. Him ascending to the throne was a good thing for the common people. Moreover, a person who could cooperate with the Rakshasa world had a clear temperament. Xiao Jin looked at Mo Feijin, her smile a little more obvious. Mo Feijin rarely saw Xiao Jin smile like this. In his memories, she had always been cold and indifferent. The royal family respected her and rarely came to disturb her. Only Mo Feijin was so unruly. His heart beat a little faster. He walked over and said, "There's still half a month. When my succession ceremony is over, Xiao Shi, will you go to the border to guard the border with Song Shi?" Xiao Jin nodded. "I must go." She had the devouring array point on her, which was too useful. She had to go. Mo Feijin's eyes dimmed and he sighed. "Jin, it's really a good thing that there are people like you and Song Shi in this world. If I could be as strong as you, I would also want to go to the border and contribute my strength. The Rakshasa world makes demonized spirit readers slaughter the common people. They are really too terrifying and disgusting." Mo Feijin couldn't help but feel disgusted when he thought of the evil deeds the demonized psychic masters had done in the human world. Xiao Jin thought about how he also respected his brother and chuckled. If one day Mo Feihuan also cooperates with the Rakshasa realm, Feijin, what will you do? Mo Feijin was stunned. That's impossible. Big brother isn't that kind of person. Thinking of this, he panicked and looked at Xiao Jin. Jin, do you know some things? He knew that Xiao Jin was a formation master, and her perception was very strong. She could see things that ordinary people couldn't. Moreover, she had never liked Mo Feihuan. Mo Feijin respected him, but he didn't believe him blindly. He suddenly hesitated. I can't see what he wants to do. Xiao Jin said faintly, I just feel that it's impossible that he doesn't have thoughts about your position. You should be more careful these days. Don't get too close to him. I know. Mo Feijin thought of something and gritted his teeth. If he has the slightest relationship with the Rakshasa world, or if he becomes a demonized spirit reader, I won't be merciful. Jin, you can rest assured. I don't need you to rest assured. If he demonizes, I will kill him immediately. But Feijin, you have to know that if you don't have evil intentions, you will definitely demonize. People with evil intentions are even more terrifying. Chapter 1041. She had seen so many disgusting spiritual readers in the modern world who had not been demonized. She knew that everything in this world was not based on appearances. No matter how stupid Mo Feihuan was, he would not expose his demonization. Demonization only targeted people with evil thoughts who were not resolute. If he only knew his own evil, then it would be different. After talking with Xiao Jin for a while, she did not know what Mo Feijin was thinking. When she returned, she seemed a bit muddle-headed. What should come would come. Mo Feijin's coronation ceremony was held as scheduled half a month later. Half a month ago, Rakshasa world had been very active. Now, half a month later, it was calm and peaceful. But none of this affected the kingdom. After all, people who were well protected would not know about the outside world. Everyone was immersed in the excitement of the coronation ceremony. Only Xiao Jin felt that this was the calm before the storm. She was not sure if this was because she had a premonition in advance, because she had the memories of the future, because this was something that had already happened. If she really had this premonition at the time, she would not have let herself fall into danger. But now, she only needed to follow everything that had happened in her memories. She was an indispensable person in the coronation ceremony. When Mo Feijin officially took over the throne, she, as the kingdom's guardian array master, needed to set up a large array and pray to the heavens. After all, in this feudal era where people truly possessed abnormal power, people like her were no different from gods. Religious shrines were the best way to control the common people. The hall was held in a large empty square. Only the tallest building had been built in the center of the square. It was several hundred meters tall. Except for Xiao Jin, no one could go up. It seemed to reach the heavens. At the very top there was an altar used to set up an array. If the blessing array was passed, the heavens would rain heavily. But at this time, Xiao Jin felt that the time array points had taken away her consciousness. She was like a bystander, bound in her former body. She could only watch everything happen. When she stepped onto the altar, she knew something was wrong. Inside the huge altar, there were countless sacrificial items. They looked messy, but in fact, they were all meticulously prepared. Xiao Jin didn't know if it was useful or not. In any case, it was just for show. Xiao Jin didn't need these to set up the array formation. It was just that people always needed something to comfort them. Only by offering something to the heavens could they be rewarded. Xiao Jin's consciousness was now trapped in her body. She could not stop the movements of this body. She recalled everything that had happened in the past. She found that she had recalled everything clearly. Countless people were kneeling before the pagoda. They were densely packed and looked boundless. They were all people who had once existed, living people. When Xiao Jin began to arrange the formation, he knelt there, full of reverence towards the heavens and the strongest formation master. Solemn, dignified, sacred, magnificent. All of this was done step by step. In the crowd, Mo Feihuan knelt behind Mo Feijin. He raised his eyes slightly and looked at the luxurious man in a thick robe in front of him. A trace of ridicule flashed through his eyes. He didn't dare to raise his head. If he did, that woman would notice that something was wrong. A trace of ridicule appeared at the corner of his mouth. He thought about how his plan was about to succeed and how everything in the future would be at his feet. He was extremely carefree. Chapter 1042. This formation was in line with everyone's imagination. When the formation took shape, the weather in the sky changed. It was as if the rolling waves had become the landscape of the sky. Dark clouds loomed overhead, as if something was about to devour them. This was a far cry from the auspicious omen in people's hearts. Some people had already started to look up unconsciously. The sky was dark, giving people a suffocating feeling. Xiao Jin just looked at this scene calmly, but her expression showed a touch of astonishment. Because back then, she had only used a simple rain formation, which couldn't have caused such a commotion. Something had changed. The extremely dense dark fog was actually not a battle formation, but rather Luosha world. A rare look of shock appeared on her face. Then, as if she had realized something, she waved her hand. Everything inside the altar was swept away, revealing the dense sealing stones below. The sealing stone could temporarily seal her ability. However, the effect was not great, and it could not seal her. However, the appearance of the Rakshasa realm was different. The devouring array points in his body had already started to go berserk. The people below were getting restless. Everyone had an indescribable look of panic on their faces. Clearly, they did not know what was happening. Hiss, roar, gigi-dash, all sorts of dark and oppressive roars could be heard. Clearly, they were not normal creatures. From the dark clouds surging with dark fog, huge black figures emerged one after another. The people below finally realized that something was wrong and looked up at the sky. When he saw those demon-like bodies, he turned pale with fright. Rakshasa realm. It's a demon. A devil from the Rakshasa realm. How could this be a devil from the Rakshasa realm? Why did Xiao Shi summon a devil from the Rakshasa realm? These words were shouted by Mo Feihuan, who was in a state of panic. When he shouted, Mo Fei could not help but turn around and look at him in disbelief. The others also reacted, and their eyes were filled with fear. They howled and retreated in fear. The woman in white on the high platform, who couldn't be seen clearly, didn't move at all. Mo Feihuan looked at Mo Feijin. His expression was filled with ridicule, but his voice was filled with incomparable fear. Xiao Shi summoned a devil from the Luosha realm. She wants to kill us. We're finished. Following his words, a commotion broke out around him. Countless people screamed and retreated. Even if Mo Feijin wanted to explain, it was useless. Xiao Jin was not the only array master in the kingdom. Naturally, there were other array masters guarding the area. The evil demons in the sky revealed their ferocious faces. Their bodies made people feel despair just by looking at them. They floated between heaven and earth. Array masters immediately set up arrays to prevent the evil demons from getting closer. All kinds of arrays appeared in the sky. Mo Feihuan shouted at Xiao Jin, "Xiao Shi, what are you doing? The border has been breached, and the demons have descended. What have you done? Hurry up and set up arrays to stop them." Xiao Jin didn't move. Following Mo Feihuan's words, Mo Feijin's heart gradually sank. One sealing stone is useless against me. But if there is a pile, he thought of something and suddenly stood up. He shouted at Mo Feihuan, "It's you. You did it." "What nonsense are you talking about?" Mo Feihuan obviously wouldn't admit it. As he retreated with the crowd, he said viciously, "Xiao Jin betrayed us. She seduced the Rakshasa realm and wants all of us humans to die." Chapter 1043. Mo Fei Jin only had the power of prophecy. He was so agitated that he lost his mind. He couldn't believe it at all. He pointed at Mo Fei Huan. "You will die a horrible death. You will die in the cruelest way in the world." After saying this, he spat out a mouthful of blood. The power was too strong. His body couldn't take it. Mo Fei Huan felt his heart shake. He had a bad feeling. He didn't think that Mo Fei Jin would react so quickly at the crucial moment, using the power on him. Without hesitation, his expression changed, and he used a formation to block the pressure in the surroundings. He said, "You actually cursed me because of her. Could it be that you are also betraying us? You have betrayed the Shanghe kingdom. You are not fit to be king." Mo Fei Jin spat out blood and fell. His appearance made Mo Fei Huan feel very bad. Mo Fei Jin's big reaction proved that he used all of his power. He exceeded his limit. He might really meet with misfortune. Especially Mo Fei Jin's curse was too vicious. But thinking of his deal with Luosha World, he was an array master. He had countless ways to escape the curse. He quickly retreated. In order to not arouse the suspicion of the other array masters, he mixed into the crowd and used an array to block Luosha World. He looked at the white figure on the high platform, a trace of jealousy flashing in his eyes. She only had a devouring array point, so what? He should have been the strongest array master because she was born early, because she subdued the devouring array point. Above everyone, below no one. Her position was what he wanted the most. King? That was a position only trash was fit for. Even if today's matter made him pay a price beyond redemption. But there was always a chance to change. There was always time. As long as he was alive, he could change everything. On the high platform, Qiao Jin's consciousness was calm, but her body was not. She heard Song Yanqing's painful words in her head. "I can't stop it." His voice was filled with longing and yearning for her. It was still so gentle, but now it was filled with heart-wrenching despair and guilt. "Jin, I've seen countless endings and seen countless histories. We can't stop all of this. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I just want you to live. I just want you to have a chance to live. Live well. You're the person I love the most. Whether it's in this life or the next, or even in the long river of time, this will never change. All right. Stay alive." After he said this, the thought completely disappeared from Qiao Jin's mind. Her face was pale. She looked up and saw the sinister faces of countless demons. They looked at her with uncontrollable greed and plunder in their eyes. This was another world. This was the human world that was born with them. The taste was too wonderful. By devouring the life and vitality here, they would be able to survive in this world. Her fingers twitched slightly. That paleness was not because of the descent of the Rakshasa realm, but because of another reality. The entrance to the border, it was opened by Song Yanqing. No matter how capable Mo Fei Huan was, he could not help the Rakshasa realm directly come over. Song Yanqing opened the border because he had seen countless endings. None of them were endings where humans could continue to exist. The real point was Qiao Jin. She waved her hand, and the rule array point appeared in the sky. Chapter 1044. The huge disc flickered with an incomparably moving light. The dazzling light made the demon unable to look directly at it. Her consciousness was slightly shocked. She remembered that she only had the devouring array points, and the rule array points were obtained by her in the modern world. No. How did she know that in the past she didn't have the rule array points? At that time, in addition to her lover being Song Yanqing, she also had her own identity, an array master. The strongest array master had to bear the greatest responsibility. She didn't care about the common people, but respected life. She could live, but she couldn't see a world without traces of life. If she just sat back and watched all of this disappear, Song Yanqing's actions would be unreasonable. Song Yanqing opened the boundary and disappeared. He paid a price that Qiao Jin didn't dare to imagine to do one thing. He went to the Rakshasa world. Xiao Jin didn't know why, but she knew that she had to wait for a time to save him. Demons had already covered the earth, and they were very fast. In their eyes, humans were just a group of defenseless food. Although many demons were instantly vaporized when they broke through the boundary, more demons continued to come, devouring humans, transforming them into life force, and successfully existing here. If this continued, no one would be able to stop their slaughter. Mo Feihuan only thought that he had a huge amount of power, but he didn't think that the Rakshasa world wanted everyone's lives, wanted this world. If everyone died, would the demons let him go? Even if humans were left behind, they would still be treated as slaves. How can I stop all of this? She asked calmly, and the rule array points gave a clear price this time. Use your own life and the world's civilization as the price, in exchange for the continuation of life. Everything will start over, and new seeds will continue to sprout. She nodded and no longer hesitated. The huge disc began to spin. She transmitted the power of the rule into the minds of all the spiritual psyche masters. Mo Feihuan's criticism couldn't resist Xiao Jin's message. She clearly stated what price they had to pay to stop the Rakshasa world. Was it the life of a generation, or the destruction of the entire world? Every spiritual psyche master had a moment of hesitation in their hearts, but soon, they all expressed their affirmation. Life had to continue, and the Rakshasa world had to be stopped. Even if he had to give up his life, he would not hesitate. The disc spun faster and faster, and as it moved, it grew bigger and bigger, almost covering the entire sky. Time was an existence that could travel back and forth at will. Space could cross between two worlds, and Devour could devour everything. Only the rules could change everything. Only the rules could make the Rakshasa realm disappear completely. And Mo Feihuan heard it as well. His face quickly stiffened. If that was the case, then what was the point of his mission? Everything he had done would be erased by the rules. He knew very well that once he succeeded, the rules would not care about this. As a spiritual reader, he was protected by the rules. However, he was a spiritual reader, so he could not survive. In order to continue all of this, the price to pay was the lives of all the spiritual readers. He never would have thought that Xiao Jin actually had law array points in his hands. She had been hiding it all along. At the thought of this, his face contorted. Almost instantly, he set up a formation and randomly assigned his life to an ordinary person. Even if he had to pay a price that he did not want to pay, he had to survive. Only by surviving would there be hope. Chapter 1045. Jean, Mo Fei Jean, who was spitting out blood, saw that the figure on the tower had been completely enveloped by the light. She was so great, yet so small. In front of the rules, the world was like dust. Everything seemed to be blurring quickly. Xiao Jin knew that it was far from enough. Far from enough. She finally knew why Song Yanqing wanted to enter the Rakshasa world. The Rakshasa world itself was a catalyst. They could also be absorbed by the rules because they would not disappear. The Rakshasa world would always exist. This was another space that the rules could not control. But it could wipe out all existences in this area and close the border. The demons also thought of this. They instantly scattered and fled. Countless demons rushed towards Xiao Jin, making loud hoarse sounds. They wanted to kill Xiao Jin, they wanted her to die. As long as she died, the plan would not succeed. The rules were preparing. Everything in the world needed to evolve. What would it be like when the Rakshasa world took over the human world? What would it be like after they were destroyed? Countless pieces of information needed to be transformed. The energy needed during this period was huge. Someone had to be sacrificed. For the sake of a possible continuation of life, everyone had to be sacrificed. Because they would definitely die. But they knew that as long as the human race could continue, as long as they could live, as long as they were alive, there was hope. They had the same expectations as Mo Feihuan, but they were thinking about something completely different. The disc spun faster and faster. The light was so strong that it could brighten the entire world. Everyone saw the huge disk in the sky. A huge butterfly rushed out of Qiao Jin's body and covered the disk. She could feel her life force rapidly draining away. A huge force attacked her. She saw Emo Feihuan staring at her with hatred. She had paid a huge price. Even Emo Feihuan would suffer. He only wanted Qiao Jin to die now. Her power had been completely absorbed by the rules and was now in the transformation stage. She could not move, but she frowned and her eyes were cold. Even though she was about to die, she didn't show any signs of depression. She was still high and mighty, looking coldly at Emo Feihuan. In her eyes, he was just an ant. Even if Emo Feihuan had not been involved in everything that had happened today, Song Yanqing had already seen that there was no hope. However, such despicable people deserve to die. Looking at Qiao Jin in such a state, Emo Feihuan's hatred grew even more. Just as he was about to attack again, a huge power of the rules came attacking. It was a kind of overwhelming power that could not be resisted at all. It showed how insignificant their so-called powerful array masters were. It was seizing everyone's life force and the price they had to pay for it. Emo Feihuan's eyelids twitched, and he quickly fled. The moment the disc stopped spinning, there was a crack, as if something was stuck. The demon in the sky knew that he was about to die. He roared unwillingly and rushed toward Qiao Jin. At the moment when it was about to disappear, its huge claws left a scar on Qiao Jin's body. Blood gushed out from her waist, and all her power was quickly sucked away. The sealing stone around her suppressed her power, and she couldn't use it. She fell to the side of the stage and couldn't maintain her body. She fell down from the 100-meter high stage. I can only die in such an undignified way, she thought. The powerful array master who used to be high and mighty was now like the most fragile butterfly. She fell from the stage. The 100-meter distance was covered in an instant. Pa! His body was smashed into pieces. Streams of blood splattered on Emo Feijin's face. It was her blood. It was warm and red. Chapter 1046. Emo Feijin had not disappeared. He looked at the corpse in front of him in disbelief. It was completely unrecognizable. It was no longer the Qiao Jin of his dreams. It was also no longer the lively array master he had just seen. His hands and feet were almost cold. He trembled as he crawled towards Qiao Jin's corpse. Even if it was just a corpse that was unrecognizable. He did not know why such a thing had happened. He also did not know why a proper succession ceremony had become like this. Tears welled up in his eyes. He was supposed to be the high and mighty king of the Shanghe kingdom. Now he had become a thing of the past. The wind was very strong. There seemed to be something swimming around. It seemed like someone was whispering. The voice was vast and indistinct. It was like the singing of a god. It faintly hid a sorrowful cry for humans. He approached the broken limbs on the ground with tears. He felt as if he could not even speak. He wailed silently, but not a single sound came out of his throat. The purple butterfly in the sky suddenly let out a loud cry. It shook its wings and closed them. It swooped down from the sky. The huge purple butterfly turned into the most brilliant color in the world. It was as if the invisible light spots had turned solid. Bit by bit, it surged into the blood on the ground. The disc stopped in midair. It did not move. Only the act of taking the price slowed down. Emo Feijin did not have time to disappear. He saw the corpses in his arms slowly gather into a complete corpse. He was shocked and surprised, but also a little happy. Actually, he did not know that Qiao Jin's consciousness had seen all of this clearly. She frowned. She was already dead. She had paid the price. In the end, she had revived and set up the array. She was sure that the array was set up by herself. But she was clearly dead here because of the Forbidden Stone. She did not have the chance to set up the array. Emo Feijin held her corpse and shouted over and over again, "Jin, Jin." Her body had recovered through the devouring process and was gradually turning into a complete corpse. Her expression was lively, and her cheeks were still rosy, but she looked like she was asleep. Mo Fei Jean hugged her body, which had already lost its warmth, and his tears continued to flow. Devouring could repair her body, but it couldn't save her life. The law stopped in front of Mo Fei Jean. It was still in the shape of a huge disc, but a line of words gradually appeared on the disc. You can pay a price that complies with the rules. Mo Fei could not help but be stunned. The price of complying with the rules? Although he was not an array master, he had long heard of the terror of the 4 major array points. There was a price to pay for everything. Xiao Jin had already sacrificed the lives of all the spiritual readers. This world was the price of being seized by the rules, including him. What other price could he pay to be seized by the rules? He didn't know what he was thinking, but he suddenly remembered what Xiao Jin had said. One day, your ability will shine brightly as well. I'm sorry, I couldn't do it. He hugged Xiao Jin's corpse and cried. He closed his eyes and held Xiao Jin's corpse in his arms. What price could he pay to revive Xiao Jin? Something, like an invisible force, was slowly approaching Xiao Jin. Mo Fei Jean looked at the world in front of him that was already falling apart. He seemed to hear something. Chapter 1047. It's not enough, she will lose her memories. As long as you're willing to give up everything you have, are you willing? Mo Fei Jean heard a voice that seemed to come from the horizon. In that instant he thought of someone. Songshi, he muttered to himself, and his eyes shone with the brightest light. Yes, Songshi. Songshi wouldn't just watch as Jean died. He loved Jean more than anyone else. How could he bear to let Jean die? It was just that the price wasn't enough. He could feel Songshi's strong determination. A spirit master of speech could pay a huge price to change fate. Songshi must have done something like this. How could he let Xiao Jin die? But it wasn't enough. Songshi had his own thoughts. He must know something. He must have seen something. Mo Fei Jean seemed to realize something. His tears stopped. He hugged Xiao Jin's corpse and murmured, I'm willing. I'll give up my eternal life as the price. If I have a spirit, I'll give up my spirit. I'll give up everything. I won't regret it. As long as you wake up, you'll be revived. You'll definitely be revived. He used his ability. He had already paid a huge price to curse Mo Fei Huan. Now he only had a sliver of strength left. He hugged Xiao Jin's corpse and spat out mouthfuls of blood. He could feel his life force leaving his body, as if he was losing something forever. Xiao Shi always said that people didn't have a second life. Since that was the case, what harm was there in giving up everything? His only ability was prophecy. Prophecies could succeed or fail. The only difference was the price he had to pay. Xiao Jin's consciousness stared at Mo Fei Jean. Her eyes were filled with shock. This was clearly wrong. Even if Mo Fei Jean used his ability and used his eternal life as the price, it wouldn't be enough to compensate for Xiao Jin's life. He had already been included in the price of the laws. He didn't have this ability. Then she felt her body move. His fingertips moved slightly. Mo Fei Jean seemed to have sensed it. His eyes flashed with ecstasy. However, at this moment, the rules no longer showed any mercy. They had to pay the price they deserved in order to change everything. Mo Fei Jin's life force was instantly seized by the laws. He transformed into a ray of light, but before he disappeared, he looked at Xiao Jin with a gratified look in his eyes. When her body fell to the ground, she felt a sharp pain. When Xiao Jin got up, the entire square was dead silent. The Rakshasa realm demon from before had already disappeared, and there was still the sound of someone screaming. The rules would seize some, but there would also be some left behind. These people were the seeds of the future. But they will lose their memories. The existence of the 4 great kingdoms would eventually disappear from history. This was at the cost of civilization. Xiao Shi, Furua's scream came from the square. She could only see Xiao Jin running toward her. her eyes filled with anxiety. Forwa was just an ordinary person. Song sure left something for me. Qiao sure. When she ran towards Qiao Jin, she was holding something in her hand. But Qiao Jin could feel her life force rapidly draining away.
She still had to die.
She was the one who changed the laws. How could she not die? She couldn't change her fate. But before she died, she still couldn't accept it. She didn't know what price she had to pay. She laid down a heaven-defying resurrection array. Chapter 1048. The originally calm sky was once again filled with turbulence. A bolt of lightning struck down from the sky, scaring Forwa so much that she didn't dare to approach. Qiao Jin vaguely saw something in the process of death. She said to Forwa, "Don't come over." Using the last of his strength, he threw something from his hand. "Do as he says." Forwa was stunned. She took the thing that Qiao Jin threw over. It was a brocade pouch. Qiao Jin shouted to her, "Go to the junction. If you can survive, if she could survive, the formation she set up would be of great use. She couldn't die like this." Song Yanqing definitely didn't go to the Rakshasa world to let her die. This matter wasn't over yet. When she revived, she would start again. She had a very strong obsession in her body. That obsession was enough to protect her for the time being, and she had to pay a huge price. That was Song Yanqing's obsession. He used his own ability to use the opportunity on himself. The price he paid could be imagined. That was the first time she shed a tear. Her cheeks were a little moist. She thought of all the people who disappeared. She thought of Song Yanqing and Mo Fei Jin. She touched her eyes, and an inexplicable power surged in her body. The disc that represented the rules rose into the air again. It felt the needle technique around Qiao Jin surging. It stood in midair, and this time, only one word appeared on the huge disc.
Sigh.
It was also conscious. It knew what Qiao Jin wanted to do. It was just a rule, and it had to be done according to the rules. Even the formation point itself couldn't do as it pleased. After absorbing what it should absorb, this world would be completely changed. Humans would disappear and change greatly. The remaining people would lose all their memories and start everything again. Spiritual readers wouldn't completely disappear, and they wouldn't disappear either. What disappeared was only this period of history. No one could know what the history of 10,000 years ago was, or what the 4 great ancient countries were like. She recalled the price she had paid for all of this. She had used Song Yanqing's obsession to resurrect herself, but the price she had to pay was more than just a backlash. What she had lost was her memories, the memories of everything that had happened. When she came back to life, it would be the beginning of everything. The only thing he didn't expect was to meet Song Yanqing again. Song Yanqing had gone to the Rakshasa world. There would not be a second him in this world. How did he come back? The surrounding scenery was already starting to blur. The heaven-defying resurrection array was starting to take effect, almost distorting the surrounding space. Qiao Jin saw the devouring array point enter her body. From the beginning to the end, only the devouring array point followed her. She did not understand why Devour had chosen to follow her. She was just an array master. To Devour, she was just a vessel. Why would Devour spend so much effort to repair a container? She tapped her forehead with the tip of her finger before everything blurred. She heard a sigh from the river of time. Who doesn't yearn for the beauty of the world? She closed her eyes. When she opened them again, she had already appeared in the underground palace. Around her were still piles of white bones. It was still the majestic but dilapidated underground palace. In front of her was an empty throne. Her palm was warm. It was the warmth of someone holding her. She turned her eyes. It was Song Yanqing's beautiful side profile. When she opened her eyes, he also opened his eyes. Chapter 1049. They met again. This time, she was very sure that she had returned. She had already left the time matrix point.
Jean, he paused.
His eyes were still gentle, and his Adam's apple moved up and down. In the end, he sighed and hugged Xiao Jin in his arms. He said, "It's good that you're okay." It was as if he was afraid of something. He saw some blurry things, as if he saw the past. He was sure that the man in his memory was himself. However, what he saw caused him to feel heartache. He didn't know if it hurt to fall from such a high place. The heart-wrenching past he had experienced inside was far less painful than the moment Xiao Jin fell from the altar. He saw the most terrifying scene in the world. Fortunately, she was still alive and came to this world alive. Xiao Jin also hugged his waist. She felt something and said in a low voice, "I'm fine." She recalled everything that she had just experienced. But there was still something that didn't match. She was sure that it was real. The time matrix point could put her in a fake world, but it couldn't cause problems with her consciousness. So, the past was real. But what was going on with Emo Jiang and the others? The 9 array points had never appeared in this place before. She thought of Emo Feijin, who sacrificed himself for her. In addition to sighing and a trace of sorrow in her heart, there was also an indescribable sadness. Emo Feihuan and the Rakshasa world cooperated to cause all this.
He actually survived until now.
Obviously, he had reached an unspeakable deal with the Rakshasa world. He also paid a price to survive. Xiao Jin looked behind her. In the empty palace, Yu and Emo Jiang had already left. Obviously, they had stayed in the time matrix point for too long. She said in a low voice, "What did you see inside?" Song Yanqing touched her head.
"I'll tell you when we get back."
In general, the things he saw were not beautiful. Especially most of them were related to the Rakshasa world. It was a ferocious and dark world. Most of the time, he could even feel the hostility in his heart. And there was one more thing. In the past, he and Xiao Jin had been very intimate. They had done very intimate things. Now that he saw such a beautiful and pure Xiao Jin, he felt a little complicated. Everything that had happened in the array point was still vivid in his mind. It was as if he had experienced it all over again. He really could not ignore the feelings of certain things. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but smile bitterly. Xiao Jin nodded. She turned around to take a look. The empty throne was now very quiet, as if there was nothing there at all. This underground city had nothing to do with their previous world. It should be a later kingdom. After all, time points could appear anywhere. Song Yanqing asked her, "Did you get what you wanted?" Xiao Jin shook his head. "There's a high probability that there isn't one. Furthermore, we've even thrown something in." When she came out, she instantly felt that the time reversal point had disappeared. This was originally a branch of time, something that could recall the past. In the end, when she was trapped in the array point, the time matrix point was actually assimilated. Now that she thought about it, Xiao Jin was not trapped inside. It was very likely that it had something to do with this array point. Time reversal? Song Yanqing guessed correctly. Xiao Jin nodded. Song Yanqing also nodded. "I guess so too." He and Xiao Jin had similar experiences, so he might have seen what she saw. He also had some guesses. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.